Hello, everybody. Please let me know in the comments where you guys are tuning in from, where you're watching from, and thank you very much for your kind donations. We've already got a few, but please let me know where you're watching from so I can shout you out, and I think we'll dive right in. So let's start with some... Let's start with Mali and Ukraine. Okay, so this one is really, really interesting because so hold on, you guys can see that? Good. So Mali have cut ties with Ukraine because apparently the Ukrainians thought it would be a smart idea to expand the war into Africa. Okay, what happened is you might have seen this in the news last week. You had about over 100 soldiers, right? So 84 from Wagner Group and 47 from the Malian army who were killed, okay? And I mean, you know, there were some photos of the battlefield and so on. And it turns out the Ukrainians gave Tuareg rebels intelligence about their location and you know, basically helped them, assisted them in carrying out this ambush and causing so many casualties. And this is the worst, you know, it's the heaviest loss that Wagner have ever sustained. Now, you know, this is not just, we're not just, you know, using conjecture here. The head of Ukraine's military intelligence, he goes the next day. So this is, I think, on the 29th of July, and he openly brags about it. So obviously the only, the only response here from Mali is to cut ties. Now, did Ukraine really do this by themselves? In my opinion, I don't think so, because Ukraine, even on their own soil, they need help with intelligence from the Americans, from the Europeans, from NATO, from the West. So and they're also in a state of war. So, you know, if they can barely function on their own soil, you know, how can Ukraine have good intelligence in Mali? Besides, we know of Ukrainian allies who were in Mali and are still in Mali and have good intelligence and resources to provide such intelligence. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about the French, of course. And if you go and look at the Sahel, you'll find the Americans, of course, right? So both the French and the Americans were kicked out of Niger recently. And in the last years, you know, we've had about 8 coups in you know, Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, Niger, and the end result is always kick the French out, kick the Americans out, and you know, let's take an anti-colonial and anti-imperialist path. Now, just recently, Niger was the latest one to be kicked out, and that was very humiliating for the French, very humiliating for the Americans. What does Niger have to do with Mali? Well, they just formed you know, basically a federation, the Alliance of Sahel States. Okay, so in French it would be l'Alliance des États du Sahel, donc c'est AES, but in English, I suppose you'd say the Alliance of Sahel States, so ASS. Okay, now that is definitely not going to go down well in Paris or in Washington because of its anti-imperialist nature. And we even had the president of Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, giving that amazing speech, right? We covered it last week, and I was translating it for you, interpreting it for you, because of how magnificent it was. And it's straight up, you know, anti-imperialist. He's just saying it to their faces. So the point here is that we've had a series of French and American, you know, humiliations in the Sahel, and now we have this alliance of Sahel states. And it's not only that, but they've been kicking the French and Americans out and getting Wagner instead. So there's an increased Russian presence there. Now, contrary to the Americans and the French, the Russians are not looking to, you know, turn Africa into a base of operations. Don't get me wrong. They, of course, have their own interests, and it's obviously good for them. They will have a sphere of influence, an additional sphere of influence, just by virtue of being there. But it doesn't have the same colonial connotation as the French, right? Remember, these are former French colonies. So having Russians come in and, you know, take care of ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Boko Haram is completely different from having the French basically never leaving, right? Still there after centuries, stealing your resources, occupying your land, and their friends, the Americans, who just care about having drone bases and an imperialist sphere of influence. So my point here is that the fact that Russians have an increased presence in the Sahel is going to make the Americans very angry. And so they hit two birds with one stone, essentially. They serve Ukraine's interests and thereby, of course, their own interests, which is really the main objective by doing things like this. And honestly, I'm gonna come back to this in a bit when we talk about Iran. But you know, expect a Russian reaction, and we know obviously that Wagner is you know, it's a private corporation and so on, but it's you know, it's intertwined with the state. Okay, it's not severed and existing in a vacuum. It's obviously very closely and well connected to the Russian state. So you expect a reaction from the Russians. Now, honestly, that, when you look at the figures, that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, forget the Russians for a second. Just look at Mali, right? 47 million soldiers. How can you expect them not to be angry over this? How can you expect them not to be angry over that? What is Ukraine doing? You know, providing intelligence to hurt the Russians in Africa. This is a very dangerous game they're playing here. Now, you know, this is the first time that we've seen Russians being killed in such heavy numbers in Africa, in this theater of war regarding Ukraine. Okay, I'm not talking about when they're fighting, you know, directly against, you know, ISIS or Al Qaeda or Boko Haram or whoever else. I'm talking about in relation to Ukraine. It's the first heavy loss, and it's actually the heaviest in general, right? So you have to understand this is going to have a lot of resounding effects for the Russians and the millions, and this is not the end of the story. And I'm going to come back to this in a second. But honestly, look at this, like, Andriy Yusov, so he's the spokesperson for Ukraine's military intelligence agency, GUR, publicly admitting that rebels in Mali received, quote, all the information they needed, which allowed them to carry out their operation against the Russian war criminals. I mean, Mali said it had learned with deep shock of the remarks, and that Yusov had admitted Ukraine's involvement in a cowardly, treacherous, and barbaric attack by armed terrorist groups that resulted in the death of members of the Malian Defense and Security Forces. So that's it. They cut ties, and they also cited comments by the Ukraine's ambassador to Senegal, Puvyarov, who was summoned by Senegal on Saturday. So he's again, once you see once again the relationship, it's all the Sahel states that are concerned by this. It's not just in Mali. You have to tie in what's just happened with Niger, what's just happened in Burkina Faso, and so you know, the Ukrainian ambassador to Senegal, okay, basically published a video on Facebook where he's saying that this is a lovely thing, that they've killed these Russians in the Sahel, and he was dressed down essentially, because when you're summoned as an ambassador, it's basically for a démarche, for a dressing down, a humiliation, and yeah. So really, it's incredible watching this, because I feel like you have to understand and see Western foreign policy as an extension of the mafia, or shall we say as an imitation of the mafia's behavior. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about a protection racket. Okay, that's what NATO is. NATO is a protection racket, but it's not just NATO. You see this also in Iraq or in the Sahel, right? The Americans, they go and create a problem. They create Al Qaeda. They create ISIS, or at least they create the conditions that allow these groups to flourish, and then they come and present the solution, right? It's like, you know, it's like the mafia coming to your shop and saying, you know, you have to pay us to protect you from ourselves. You know, the people that are going to throw bricks through your window and destroy your shop. It's the same ones that you're paying not to harass you, right? It's a protection racket. So it's the exact same thing. The French and the Americans helped create this problem in the Sahel with all these terrorist groups running around. They did that by bombing Libya, by overthrowing Gaddafi, by lynching him, and through centuries of colonialism and foreign policy. So they are responsible for this mess. And then they come and say, oh, well, hey, guess what? You need us on your land. You have to let us build these military bases so we can help you, right? And then when you kick them out, what happened last year when we started seeing them being kicked out of Niger and being kicked out of Burkina Faso and Mali and Chad? Suddenly you have terrorist attacks. Right? Now, the French, of course, the whole point of that is say, look, see what happens when you kick us out? You have these terrorists running wild. But when actually there is no security situation, it's the French and the Americans themselves who are likely, in all likelihood, behind those attacks. right? And it's the same thing here. So they're basically coming in and saying, look, you have to have us on your land. You need us to protect you. Wagner are not doing a good job. The Russians can't help you. You need us, right? It's a veiled threat. It's like the mafia offering you a protection racket. And so that's what you have to take away from it. I wholeheartedly and 100% believe that Western foreign policy it's just international mobster behavior, okay? You have to look at it that way. This is my thesis to you, okay, that I submit to you. Western foreign policy is a mirror image, is a spitting image of how the mob behave. It's just done on an international state level, okay? That's my thesis. There's more than enough evidence to back it up. So let's move on now to I mean, what's been happening in England, but I'll just read out some of your comments. Again, we've got people tuning in from Brazil, from Uruguay, from New York, from Toronto, from Washington, from the Bahamas, from Canada, from Brooklyn, from France, from Madison. We've got people tuning in from Germany, from Ghana, from Senegal, from Tunisia, from California, from Virginia. The whole planet is here every time. I love it. I love it. So that's really great. And thank you for your donations. Thank you, Harinder. And thank you also to Mustafa, who says, thank you for always showing us the truth. When will you start calling your viewers the Satan Yahoo fan club? I mean, I'm not sure what you mean by the viewers. I think most of the viewers are quite opposed to Satan Yahoo, but honestly, the name is very good. So thank you. Marissa also says happy birth month. Forgot the exact day. Sorry, it's the 20th. But you're very kind, Marissa. Thank you. You remember to big up the Leos. Okay, so and thank you to Tui for the donations. Let's talk about England. Let's talk about what's been happening, because it also relates to Gaza. It also relates to Israel, and I'll explain to you in just a second. Just let me pull up the window for you. So you should be able to see this now, okay? So where to begin? Okay. So I'm going to explain to you what's been happening in England during the last days. You've been seeing these scenes of hooligans, of rioters out on the streets. And the only word I can use to describe these are, pogroms. That's the only word I can think of. These are pogroms, okay? You have people coming out and trying to burn down mosques or throwing bricks and bottles at mosques, lynching or trying to lynch at least, a black person who's walking down the street, and you have a mob of like 20 white people attacking them, or attacking an Asian person or a Muslim person or an Arab person. I've seen this over and over and over and over again, and it's unbelievable. Get him out of it! My God, it's wrong. Yeah, so that stand, by the way, they essentially attacked a stall offering Qurans. Okay, so I mean, it's an obvious hate crime. Yeah! Go on, you just, the scum of the earth. These people are the scum of the earth. And then they were also trying to traffic, basically, to act as traffic wardens based on the color of the person driving the car. So they're literally standing there and saying, if you're white, you can pass. And if you're not white, you can't pass. They've gone and attacked graves of Muslims. They've put paint on the graves. They've vandalized them, essentially. They've gone and tried to burn down a hotel where migrants, or rather, Christ, it's starting to rub off. Their nonsense starting to rub off, where they're attacking asylum seekers, which they call migrants for some reason. They're too thick to understand the difference between a refugee and someone who is an immigrant. But okay, what can you expect from such people? They literally tried to burn it down. And look at this mob standing outside. I mean, this is unequivocally attempted murder. It's attempted murder. All of these people are looking at life sentences. I'm not joking.
Oh shit, man, they're in. They're in. Oh wow.
Where are you bastards?
They're in! Fucking hell! They are going upstairs at last. Get out! Get out!
They're in.
Oh shit, man, they're in. They're in. Oh wow.
It's absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Here, look at the aftermath. Look at the damage that they've caused. So what they've done basically is they have a list of hotels where people who are making refugee applications, who are seeking asylum, right, are housed temporarily, you know, because they've fled war. They don't have resources, do they? And they've gone and tried to burn them down. Okay. And you have to ask yourself, where is the police? You have to ask yourself, what is the police doing during all of this, right? I think that's an interesting question to ask, because where we have seen the police, they've basically been attacking them. Okay, they say that immigrants don't respect the law, but it's actually the far right that don't respect the law. They vandalize, they loot, they rob, they attack, they mob, they bully, they destroy, they even unleash violence on the authorities. It's really amazing hypocrisy.
Go on! Bikes and everything, boys! Get on! Go on, window screen smash! Woo-hoo-hoo! Yes! Like and share the live, drop a follow, boys! Go on, boys!
I mean, it's chaos. I mean, I can sit here all night and show you these videos. It's chaos. You get the idea. And all of this started, why did this begin? Well, it didn't begin just yesterday, but nevertheless, the catalyst, if you will, is there were 3 girls that were stabbed in Southport, and they started saying that a Muslim immigrant had done it. And it turns out it's a UK national, so it's someone who's born in the UK, in Wales actually, who is Christian and has Rwandan parents. But they said that they're a Muslim immigrant. And usually the police would not release the identity of the assailant, but they did in this case just to show what morons how moronic these rumors are and how moronic the people spreading them are. Okay, so they said a Muslim immigrant did it, but it was a Rwandan who is Christian and born in Wales. I mean, quite different profiles, yes? So it's amazing watching the BBC also. Look at how they describe this stuff. It's really unbelievable. So they call it unrest. Unrest. Not pogroms. Unrest. So, attacking mosques, trying to burn refugees alive. I mean, I showed you the video. You know how dangerous that is, right? I don't have to explain that burning down a hotel is attempted murder. There are people inside a hotel, usually. Yes? I've never heard of an empty hotel. So they know there are asylum seekers in there. They have these locations. And so they say that a car burns after being overturned during an anti-immigration protest. Well, I mean, when you're burning a car, is anti-immigration protest really the right term? I don't know. Or unrest, at least. Unrest sounds really mild. What does unrest mean? A bunch of cows mooing? There's unrest amongst the herd? What does that mean? I showed you the videos. It's just a small section. It doesn't look like unrest to me. It looks like a lot more than that. And then they say, for example, they witnessed demonstrators carrying a banner referring to the Southport knife attacks. Again, that's done by a Christian born in Wales. Before throwing cans and bottles at police officers and shops with the shutters down. So this is very clearly hooliganism and violence, but they call it demonstrators. How do you differentiate them between someone, for example, chaining themselves to a lamppost or holding a sign and someone who throws bottles and bricks at the police? Don't you think demonstrator loses its meaning when you do that? And then also underneath, they say cars and homes and side streets around the town center have been targeted, windows smashed, wheelie bins have been set alight. I mean, it's what they're describing doesn't match the terms they're using, okay? They're basically trying to whitewash the far-right protests, if we can again call them protests. They're more like pogroms, to make them seem like, it's just a bunch of people who are just peacefully protesting. Well, obviously they're not. You can see here how someone on the BBC was talking about it on TV.
And for around half an hour, it was quite peaceful. There was a small counter-protest, and for around half an hour, it was quite peaceful. There was a small counter-protest, the pro-British march on one side of the town hall here, and the counter-protest on the other side of the town hall. It was around o'clock.
The pro-British march, okay, whatever that means. So let me explain to you who's behind this, all right? Because you have to understand that this is not an isolated incident. This didn't just happen, by coincidence. One of the chief instigators of these riots is someone called, who now calls himself Tommy Robinson. Okay, that's not his real name. That's not his real name. So this guy has about 5 different names. I'm not joking. You go on Wikipedia, he's got like 5-6 different names. We think his real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon. Okay, so this guy calls himself, a massive English patriot, but ironically, his stepfather is Scottish and his mother is Irish. So when you have someone like that calling other people less English and changing his name to something more English, from Yaxley Lennon to Robinson, it sounds a bit hypocritical, doesn't it? And you can see him here wearing a T-shirt with the Israeli Defense Forces, and he's gone to occupy Palestine illegally and taken photos on top of Israeli tanks. And we know for a fact that his benefactors, his patrons, are Israelis, right? His legal fees have been paid by Israelis, by Zionists, and the English Defense League, which doesn't exist anymore, but he used to be associated with it, is closely related to the Jewish Defense League, which is a Zionist organization. So, he is openly taking photographs, posing with a genocidal army. Not now, but, when has it not been genocidal? And again, this guy calls himself an English patriot, supposedly, right? And he puts on a T-shirt of the IDF when the Israelis are responsible for the deadliest terrorist attack against British subjects in history. How can you be an English patriot and then you celebrate an army that has killed more British subjects in a terrorist attack than anyone in history? What kind of a patriot are you? So he goes on Israeli TV. He goes on Israeli television. Okay, this is in the last 2 days, and he admits that all of these riots, these pogroms, are related to October 7th, basically admitting that, he doesn't like that people are protesting against genocide. So we know that he is paid by Israel, or at least his benefactors are Israelis. Okay, he's posing in IDF merchandise alongside the IDF on occupied soil in Palestine, and then advancing an Israeli agenda, which is Islamophobia, which is anti-Arab racism. Because you have to understand, the Israelis, they need anti-Arab racism, they need Islamophobia in the UK, in the West, so they can keep saying, oh my God, we are surrounded by terrorists, we need your money and your guns, please. They need that. Okay, so listen to him on Israeli TV, all right?
Right now, we have had jihad attacks every year for 15 years.
A jihad attack. What is a jihad attack? What is that? What is that?
What we've seen since October the 7th is the takeover of our capital city every single week by pro-Hamas, pro-jihadi groups who are encouraging hatred on our streets. And the problem's been...
I mean, just take the text that he's saying, what's coming out of his mouth. Remove the name, remove the accent that he's putting on, and you can, it sounds indistinguishable from an Israeli. Absolutely, utterly indistinguishable. Indistinguishable. Right? Just throw the words in there, the magic words, jihadi, Islamic, Islamist, Muslimanic, you know? All the key words, the buzzwords, right? Which don't really mean anything.
They're unchallenged by the police.
The people have taken part.
They're unchallenged by the police, really. Is that why European police forces are banning anyone who opens their mouths and arresting even Jews, right, who say they're against genocide all across Europe? Is that why they've prescribed Hamas as a supposed terrorist organization? Really, they're doing nothing, really. You see, like a Zionist, he self-victimizes. He makes up some fantasy that doesn't exist in reality, and despite all the evidence, you know, makes it out to be, oh yeah, we are the victims.
In a far-right protest in central London this afternoon, led by activist Tommy Robinson.
הרשויות בבריטניה מאשימות את האיש הזה שהצית את הכל, פעיל הימין טומי רובינסון, מייסד תנועת הימין נגד מהגרים בשם הליגה להגנת אנגליה. משרד הפנים הבריטי אפילו קורא להגדיר את ה-EDL כארגון טרור. רובינסון מגיב בראיון בלעדי לצינור.
They're trying to put the blame for this at my door. When the locals took to the streets in anger.
Well, no one is trying to put the blame on his door. He's literally been inciting this stuff for the last couple of days. Okay, so to come here and pretend like he has nothing to do with it, I mean, this is hilarious. So I'm going to tell you what a hypocrite this guy is. He claims he's an English patriot and then wears an IDF t-shirt and changes his name because it sounds Irish and he wants it to sound English. He complains about immigrants, and then he himself is an immigrant in Spain. He doesn't even live in England. He is an immigrant who lives in Spain. He complains about illegals and is convicted of, this guy is convicted of having entered the United States illegally on a fake passport. He went to prison for that. Again, let me repeat that. Tommy Robinson, Yaxley Lennon, whatever his name is, Paul Harris, I don't know, he has 5-6 different names, was convicted of entering the United States illegally on a fake passport. And then he turns around and complains about quote-unquote illegals in the UK. What he means are asylum seekers, which is the most legal thing under international law. Every single human being on the planet has a human right to apply for asylum. That's a fact. You can dislike it, but it's a fact. It's not illegal. It's utterly, completely, unequivocally legal. Okay? Unlike Tommy Robinson's, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, Paul Harris's behavior. All right? And then he talks about, oh, we have to leave the European Union. We have to have Brexit. And then he goes and lives in the European Union. Is there anything this guy does that is not hypocritical? He is a walking hypocrite. He's the epitome, you know, of a hypocrite. It's truly unbelievable, right? And then he and his ilk talk about refugees who are victims of British foreign policy, victims of Western imperialism. They call them invaders. And then he goes and poses with invaders, with the Israeli army, who are illegally occupying 3 countries. Invaders in every sense of the word. I mean, the hypocrisy is unbelievable. It's stinking. It's so Israeli. It's that exact projection that we keep talking about, that Israeli projection, the Zionist projection. He embodies it, right? It's amazing. It really is. What could he be but a Zionist, right? What could he be except a Zionist? So this is from David Miller, who's done also excellent work. And he says here, is Tommy Robinson, in quotation marks, a Zionist asset? Liberal Russophobes are uncomfortable with the idea that he is a Zionist asset, partly because of their own Judeophilia. So how do they explain that his legal fees have been paid by the Middle East Forum, a US-based think tank, which is in reality a cutout for the Mossad? Or the many other Zionist tributaries to his financial support. They are also well known, and they have been reported on in The Guardian. And then David Miller also goes on to talk about how the state of Israel is burning down the UK, right? So he basically he quotes the clip I just played to you, okay? And then here also he talks about the strategy here. So why is this happening? Number one, these pogroms are happening in the UK right now to punish the average British citizen, especially minorities, for protesting against genocide. right? You want to come out, Tommy Robinson is essentially saying that. You want to come out every week and say you don't like genocide? Okay, we're going to come burn down the mosque. We're going to beat you up in the street because you're a shade darker than I am. By the way, I think he opened a tanning salon, which is very funny for someone who doesn't like brown people. I mean, the hypocrisy on this guy is so funny. There's a thing in his life that isn't a hypocrisy. It's unbelievable. You couldn't make this stuff up, I swear. And then the second part of the strategy here is punish the Labour government over its empty posturing over banning arms sales to the state of Israel. So what does that mean? Recently, the British government said they're going to challenge the ICC's jurisdiction, right? So they can basically oppose the application for an arrest warrant against Netanyahu. That's the idea, right? Stall the ICC. Come up with some reason so we don't have to arrest Netanyahu if he comes to the UK. And the Labour government now under Keir Starmer dropped that. They dropped this legal challenge to the ICC, okay, over its jurisdiction. It doesn't mean anything because they're still giving weapons to Israel, so they're still supporting the genocide. As Professor Miller correctly puts it, it's empty posturing. But nevertheless, the Israelis don't take it that way. Anything short of absolute total subordination is considered treacherous and anti-Semitism, and they'll come up with a million names and ways to describe it. But basically, Zionists cannot tolerate this. Even if it's empty posturing, it's still against their interests and their image. They'll punish you for it. So they want to punish the average British citizen for protesting against genocide. They want to punish the empty, garbage position of the Labour government. And finally, this is to make an example out of England for other European countries and other Western countries. If you keep on opening your mouths about what we're doing in Gaza, if you try to subvert us, even in, just rhetorically or in an empty manner, we'll come after you. We will turn your country upside down. We will burn it to the ground. Now, I need to remind you something, that the Israelis lie about everything. The Israelis are committing a genocide. If you're committing a genocide, does a pogrom seem that far-fetched? Does a pogrom seem far-fetched for someone who commits genocide? Of course not. They're one and the same. They go together. They go hand in hand, right? Someone who commits genocide is absolutely capable of committing a pogrom. This is not a big deal. It takes far less resources. It's undercover. It's done, indirectly. But nevertheless, we can see all the breadcrumbs. This guy is very clearly a Zionist asset. He's proudly taken a photo with the IDF. What more do you need? They're bankrolling him. What more do you need? Okay, and even if he wasn't, this behavior is utterly disgusting, and it only benefits the Israelis. It only benefits the Israelis. So this is really something that is that needs to be looked into. And Loki also here posted how the English Defence League, okay, so basically they changed it to English and Jewish Defence League. Okay, if you look at the company registers, you'll find that they're the same thing. And you should note that the Jewish Defense League is prescribed as a terrorist organization in the United States, right? That's what's so ironic about all of this. And I'll remind you of something else, because not only is this man a hypocrite, he is also, and not just him, I'm talking about all of these people in the streets, these hooligans, these thugs, these delinquents, these racists, these, people that are coming out and thinking that violence is acceptable. They constantly talk about immigrants as not respecting the law, right? Well, how come he fled the country? Again, just to make this absolutely clear, okay? This man, the Zionist asset that we're talking about, okay? Yaxley Lennon, right? Tommy Robinson, Paul Harris, whatever his name is. He fled the United Kingdom just a few days ago. He was supposed to go to court for contempt of court because the court told him a few years ago not to show a film where he lied about a Syrian refugee, and he went and broadcast it anyway. So the court said you have to come in, and we're charging you with contempt of court. He fled the country. He left via the Eurotunnel. This is just a few days ago. How can someone call themselves an English patriot and they have such disregard and contempt for the law, for the organs, the judicial system of the country? Explain that one to me. Explain it. I understand to describe it as unfair and so on, but to flee the country, I mean, unless you're persecuted, which is something entirely, but this man is not. And what's ironic is that you have to note the cooperation of the state. So forget why he fled or the fact that he fled. I'm going to show you the state's role in this. The judge there's a judge that issued an arrest warrant for him, okay? And I was reading through this, and I recognized the name of the judge because I've been covering the Assange case for a couple of years, right? It's the same judge, Justice Johnson. I immediately recognized the name. And the funny thing is the arrest warrant is not active. So he issued an arrest warrant, but it doesn't come into effect until October. Have you ever heard of such a thing? There's a warrant out for someone's arrest, but it's not in effect for a couple of months. What kind of an arrest warrant is that? So I find this incredible for several reasons. Because if you look at Julian Assange is a journalist. He didn't incite riots in the country. He didn't, say racist things or publish racist things or lie about people. He is an upstanding citizen, an Australian citizen in the UK, residing peacefully, doing his job as a journalist, speaking truth to power. They wouldn't allow him bail. His health was failing. They wouldn't allow him bail. They wouldn't allow him house arrest. No mercy whatsoever. Leaving the country on top of it, that's amazing. That is amazing. Can you imagine that? Assange was literally politically persecuted. He applied for asylum and they demonized him, and they still demonize him. Oh, you're running away from justice. I'm sorry, man, when a foreign country is giving you political... I'll tell you something else. What's also funny is that while he was trying to leave the country, they tried to search him. He refused, and then they arrested him under the Counterterrorism Act, which, again, I'm against the Counterterrorism Act. We all know what it is. I've talked about it before. It's authoritarian and archaic. But nevertheless, they arrested him, so they obviously saw that he has a court date the next day. And he gets bail and then leaves the country. So just in conclusion, he's given bail. He's allowed to leave the country. He's issued an arrest warrant that is inactive. How can you look at that and not call that preferential treatment? How can you look at that, given this guy's behavior and who he is, and not suspect that there is some foul play, some foul crap going on here? I sense that the Israelis pressured the British government to let this guy flee. That's just my sentiment. It's just conjecture. I'm just speculating. It's not like we need any more things to show that he's an Israeli asset. We already know he is. He very clearly is, right? The photo speaks for itself. But and he speaks for himself. His language is pure Israeli, pure Zionist. So, these people are scum. These people are utter, absolute scum. Okay? And Keir Starmer is equally responsible, because when Keir Starmer was absent, the Home Secretary was absent, the police, the army were absent. It's because of Keir Starmer sending them off, distracting them with genocide in Gaza. Go and support the Israeli war effort. Let riots happen in England, whatever. Let's not send the army. Let's not send the police. Just let the riots happen, even if mosques or hotels are burnt down. And the same thing can be said of Rishi Sunak and Priti Patel and Suella Braverman and all these politicians before, because for years they've been demonizing people that are brown, people that are Muslim, people that are Asian, immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, you name it. Even though Suella Braverman, Priti Patel and Rishi Sunak themselves are children of immigrants, right? They are themselves children of immigrants. And yet they demonize immigrants. Keir Starmer, what did he say recently? He's saying, he's talking about sending people from Bangladesh back to Bangladesh. It's extraordinarily racist, right? And these people, they call themselves, British patriots. I'm sorry, the United Kingdom cannot be in the United Nations and call itself a civilized country and be a signatory, as a matter of fact, an author of the Refugee Convention, and then treat refugees who are victims of British foreign policy like this. Being so people are fleeing bombs, British bombs. They come for, they flee to Britain for safety, and then we try to burn them down again. What kind of decadent, uncivilized barbarism is this? Don't come to me and talk about, illegal immigrants destroying the country when you yourself are going out and destroying the country, behaving like a hooligan, behaving like some, decadent thug and pulverizing your own community. Don't talk to me about the country has been taken over. It has been taken over by Zionists, by people like this, okay? By Zionists. You're right. In that sense, it has been taken over by the Israelis and their agents like Stephen Yaxley Lennon, Tommy Robinson, Paul Harris, whatever his name is, okay? You're going to come here and talk about asylum seekers taking up money and space and resources. I'm sorry, there's far more money being spent on bombs and wars, okay, and sanctions, which created the refugees in the first place. The same people that are saying, oh, we have to take things into our own hands now, which is basically, they're basically saying, I can behave like a vigilante. You know, I'm going to take the law into my own hands. I'm going to burn people down. I'm going to, you know, attack them. I'm just going to do what I want. I'm going to be a thug. These people then turn around and call Palestinians terrorists when they fight against Israeli colonizers. The difference is that looting and hooliganism and attempted murder are illegal, whereas Palestinian armed struggle is absolutely and perfectly legal. So who's the terrorist? Okay, who is the terrorist? Again, you want to talk about illegal immigrants? This guy literally entered the United States with a fake passport. I mean, the hypocrisy is rank. No one is more illegal than American troops on foreign soil. No one is more illegal than British spy planes buzzing over Gaza or French troops occupying Africa. Okay? Those people you're calling immigrants are refugees. They're running away from our mess. We bombed their homes. We killed their friends. We killed their families. We left them jobless. We destroyed their economies. We destroyed them with sanctions. We looted and robbed their resources for centuries. Thieving to the point they can't recover and stand up on their own 2 feet. We kept drilling this into their heads, how the white man is so much better. And now that they want to come over and take a look and see where their money went, you put up a wall? If only there was a wall to stop your thieving ass 300 years ago. If only. You know, the same people whining about migrants, they want Arabs to tolerate Israeli invaders. These are people with weapons, with tanks, with nuclear bombs, and they encourage British Jews or European Jews to leave the country because they're so anti-Semitic. They want them to just leave the country and go to Palestine and emigrate on top of somebody else's land and give them bombs too. Christ, I mean, double standard is really, you know, is really an understatement. You want to stop people from exercising their right under international law to seek asylum? Fine, but don't turn around then and lecture the world about human rights the next morning, all right? And don't talk to me about securing our borders. Our borders are perfectly fine. We have nuclear weapons. We have one of the best navies in the world. It's Arab borders that need securing from us, okay? It's African borders that need securing from the West. The top 3 countries that produce refugees are Ukraine, Syria, and Afghanistan. All of these countries have one thing in common. They've been bombed and destroyed by NATO. All right, the West invaded and destroyed these countries. How bizarre that Tommy Robinson / Stephen Yaxley Lennon / Paul Harris / Israeli Zionist name won't mention any of this. The far right in France, in Britain, in America won't mention sanctions bombs that create the refugees that they keep whining about so much. If you're so worried about foreigners coming to the country, then stop bombing people, stop stealing their resources, stop being an imperialist little shit, and mind your business, all right? Otherwise, you can fuck off and shut your damn mouth. And thank your lucky stars, by the way, that these refugees you demonize so much are innocent, decent human beings who aren't vengeful little gobshites like yourself. Let's talk about Iran and Russia and the upcoming response. So, actually, no. We're going to talk about Israel's latest crimes, which are really, I mean, I don't have any words. I really don't have any words. The Israelis went and bombed 2 schools, okay? And this mother had to witness her own daughter being burned alive in front of her. I don't even know what to say. I mean, this is... I'm speechless, really. Forget Ismael Haniyeh for a second. Forget the assassinations the Israelis just did. This mother alone, the Israelis deserve a response just for this mother alone. Never mind all the other mothers, never mind the assassination. Do you see how much pain is being caused here? Do you see how much pain that is? And then they demonize these people. They call these people invaders. They call these people, you know, Amalek and Goyim and all sorts of racist things. I mean, if someone did that to me, if someone did that to you, what would you do afterwards? If someone, you know, burns your children in front of you and you take up arms afterwards, you're the terrorist? I think burning someone's children in front of them is terrorism, me personally. I don't know about you. I think most of the world would agree with me, but nevertheless, we know Israelis don't really care. As a matter of fact, the Israeli finance minister was just saying that it may be justified in his grandiose opinion to starve 2 million Gazans, but the world won't let us. Oh, the poor guy. poor Smotrich, you know? Again, Smotrich, what a perfectly Middle Eastern name. So he says, blocking humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip is justified and moral, even if it causes 2 million casualties, 2 million people to die of hunger. But the international community won't allow that to happen. We bring aid in because there's no choice. We can't, in the current global reality, manage a war. Nobody will let us cause 2 million civilians to die of hunger, even though it might be justified and moral until our hostages are returned. Humanitarianism in exchange for humanitarianism is morally justified, but what can we do? We live in a certain reality. We need international legitimacy for this war. You know, that's again, this is Israeli, you know, democracy at work here. Remember, Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East. Just showing how, you know, how much they respect international law and the Geneva Convention and how they've applied these things domestically. Really an upstanding person, wouldn't you agree? What an upstanding human being. What a humanitarian. He can't, you know, it's the world that's unfair. Why can't you let Jews in Israel starve 2 million people? Why is the world so anti-Semitic? I don't understand. By the way, there's a name for this. It's called genocide. You can call it, you know, tango if you want. You can call it red if you want. You can call it whatever you want. PC. I don't care. The point is, it's wrong. You know, starving 2 million people is wrong. The supremacism here is so obvious. You know, he puts the thing with hostages in there, but the Israelis really do believe this. They think that, you know, 100 Israelis are worth 2 million Palestinians. You have to be a racist, a supremacist, a nut job to believe something like that, right? I mean, again, I don't know what to say. And once again, just to showcase Israel's, you know, compassion and their respect for you know, democracy and human rights, they drone striked 2 Al Jazeera journalists, Ismael Al and Rami Al-Rifi. They murdered them with such precision that I saw one of the photographs from the car. One of them had his head completely missing. It's with that precision. Okay, so I want you to remember that when the Israelis claim that they are a democracy, when they claim that they care about press freedoms, when they claim they don't kill civilians, when they claim that they just have to drop 2,000-pound bombs on building blocks because they don't have any, you know, they just don't have anything else. They obviously have more precise means. This is a moving vehicle, and they've blown one of these journalists' head off. Okay, I mean, you know. Listen to one of his colleagues afterwards, and I agree with this caption. If a white correspondent delivered these words into a camera, the whole world would stop.
We do everything. We wear our press jackets, we wear our helmets, we try to not go to anywhere where it's not safe. We try to go to anywhere where to keep our security, but we have been targeted in normal places where normal citizens are. We're trying to do everything, but at the same time, we want to report, we want to tell the world what's going on. It's heartbreaking to report this today, and it's heartbreaking to report Shireen's killing, Hamza's killing, and Samir's killing. And this is not the first time we're doing this, but every time it feels as if it's the first time. It's a great loss for us here, journalists in Gaza, and especially Al Jazeera's team losing such a colleague. We do everything. We wear our press jackets, we wear our helmets, we try to not.
Honestly, I think it's better for journalists not to wear the press vest, because the Israelis, when they see the press vest, it's like, you know, when they see the fatigues that a doctor is wearing, for them this is a target. Doctors in Gaza actually take off their you know, their scrubs, basically, when they leave work, because they're afraid of being sniped or hit with a drone, precisely because they're doctors. And I think the same applies to journalists. And here they were taking off their press vests in protest. Look at the Americans try to justify this.
So in the same thing, you know, journalists should not be punished for what they do. anywhere in the world.
That is absolutely true, Said.
But we have seen yesterday is a premeditated crime to kill a journalist for doing their job. They were right there in the front of Ismael Haniyeh's home, just to show the destroyed home from our, our colleague from Al Jazeera, Ismael.
Okay, so they went to film in front of Ismael Haniyeh's home after he was assassinated, right? And that's how it began.
And his cameraman Rami, and they were told by the Israelis to leave the scene. They did. They got in their car and they moved, and then they were bombed. I mean, that is summary execution, isn't it?
Said, I spoke to this a little bit yesterday, and the good news that we have relating to these American citizens who have returned, who will be returning to the United States. I don't have an update on this other situation for you beyond that. Let me just say, because you've asked the question, the reports that you mentioned yesterday as well, we've seen those reports. We're tracking the details. We continue to engage with our partners in Israel about any additional information.
Empty words. What does that mean? We've seen the reports. We're continuing to track with our partners in Israel. About what? About what? Is there a zombie apocalypse? Was there a tanker oil spill? What happened? An oil tanker spill? Empty words. They mean literally nothing.
But beyond that, when we have talked about journalists who have been killed in Gaza, this is something that the Secretary has spoken to a great deal. We have time and time again offered not just our condolences to Palestinian journalists killed in Gaza, but we have attempted to make clear just how vital the work of journalism has been.
Okay, that's very good. We know journalism is valuable. Yes. You offered your condolences. Guess what? We don't want your condolences. Just stop killing people. How about that? Because you're providing the bombs, right? So you can't say you're not responsible. Just stop killing journalists. No one wants your condolences. Save the condolences. Spare us. I mean, have you ever seen...
to showcase the ongoing dire conditions in the Gaza Strip and how...
Yeah, what dire conditions? Who's causing the dire conditions? Can you elaborate? I really hate politicians. So I hate these mouthpieces so much. I don't even know why I do this. They're really, really scum. And then they try and justify this. The Israelis try and justify this by saying, well, these journalists like El-Ghul, they're actually in Hamas. Obviously, they don't have any evidence, but they claim this. Now, let's say that's true for a second. I'll remind you just that Hamas is a political party. So when they say they're in Hamas, what does that mean in Hamas? Do they work as a clerk in a government building? Are they a resistance fighter? Are they a member of the political party? What does that mean they are in Hamas? Are they the leader of Hamas? What does that mean? Is it okay for a CNN journalist? Can Hamas go and assassinate a CNN journalist or a New York Times journalist or a Fox News journalist and then say, hey, they were a member of the Republican Party, we had to kill them? Sorry. Or hey, they were embedded with the US Army in Iraq. They were embedded with the Israeli army in Gaza. They're combatants. We had to kill them. Ironically, and I'm not saying it's justified, but ironically, the people being embedded with the US Army and the Israeli army have done far more to kill people than anyone in Al Jazeera, all right, by a long stretch. But nevertheless, obviously, no journalists should be killed, even the scummy ones. Obviously, that goes without saying. I'm just reiterating it in case we have any nutjob Zionists listening. But, imagine Hamas assassinating an Israeli journalist or an American journalist saying, hey, they were a member of the Republican Party. They were a Democratic Party member. We had to kill them. Sorry. That's how it is. What kind of reasoning is that? And in the West, these people's colleagues, right? Other journalists in the West, they don't even ask, like, well, why did you kill these people? Where's your evidence for this, assertion that they're members of Hamas? Even if they were members of Hamas, what does that mean? Hamas is a political party. Why can't you be a member of Hamas? It's the biggest party in Gaza. What's wrong with being a Hamas member? Are there not journalists in America who are, no, nothing. It's just like, well, it's a given. It's a given that you kill an Al Jazeera journalist, of course, right? This is the mindset of people who call themselves reporters in the West. They don't even have a common, common decency, a basic shred of compassion for their own colleagues who do far more and literally give their lives to show us what's happening in Gaza, right? Who have far more integrity than they'll ever have. And as they killed these two journalists, they also killed Khaled El-Shawa, so a 17-year-old boy who is riding his bike. Just killed like that. And while all of this is happening, you have a polio epidemic in Gaza now. There's an epidemic. It's not just a few cases. It's officially an epidemic. And you also have at least 40,000 cases of hepatitis in Gaza. Israeli media were ironically saying it's 100,000. Now the UN say it's 40,000. Regardless, I think we can all agree that this is not good. What it is biological warfare. When the Israelis are fomenting these conditions and creating these, this literal, ecosystem, allowing bacteria to flourish because they are, not allowing medicine in, they've cut off the water, they have besieged the Gaza Strip. This is what a medieval siege looks like. That's what would happen in a medieval siege. 1,000 years ago, 400, 500 years ago, when you would encircle a city and besiege a city and cut off the food and allow people inside to starve to death and to die of disease, this is the same thing. It's no different. It's the exact same thing. It's a medieval siege. The whole idea is to allow pathogens and diseases to develop, to flourish, right? Because people are cut off, because they are concentrated, like in a camp, because they are unable to access medicine. And if you don't have water, your body can't fight infections. That goes without saying, right? So even if you're wounded, you might die just because of a wound that is normally perfectly treatable, but or you have a fever, you can't recover. You can't do anything without water. Doctors can't work without water. You don't have water, it creates a million different problems. It's like when you cut off fuel, which the Israelis also did. So you see the problems that are arising from this. You don't have to be, a doctor or a biological, a biologist or an expert in pathogens in order to ascertain that this is going to happen. Obviously, everybody saw this coming, and we've been whining about this and complaining about this for months. And now it's here, and now they're just letting it continue. What's a polio epidemic? Whatever. Like let's just let it happen. I mean, calling this scummy behavior, it doesn't even come close, really. And so a few hours ago, the Israelis returned over 80 bodies of Palestinians to Gaza. These are bodies that are decomposing. And, it's like in the movies when the mob, they murder someone and then they just throw them out of a car and speed away. This is the same behavior. They have murdered 80 people and then they just dump their bodies and go away. How is that not the same as the mob? It's actually worse than the mob, because the mob is not the mafia are not state actors, and the Israelis constantly want to ram this down our throats that they're a state. States they're not supposed to behave like this unless they're rogue Nazis. But I think we all know what Israel really is. And Palestinians have to identify their family members or try to identify their decomposing bodies. Can you imagine looking at your family members, in such a state? Would you tolerate that? What would you do if someone did that to you, if a country did that to you? What would you do? As a matter of fact, Gaza officials say Israeli forces took 2,000 bodies over the course of the war, okay? So, over the course of 304 days of the genocide, the occupation has kidnapped more than 2,000 bodies of martyrs and dead people from dozens of cemeteries in the governorates of the Gaza Strip, which the occupation bulldozed with bulldozers and military vehicles and turned their graves over in a scene that violates humanity and human feelings. The Israeli occupation army, the one that Stephen Yaxley Lennon likes to take photos with, desecrates the dignity of the bodies of 89 martyrs, handing them over as skeletons and decomposed corpses. I mean, I don't really know what to say. I don't know what to say. It's there's so many crimes, really. And what I've shown you is like nothing. I mean, this is like, not even half of what Israel did just today. Just today. And the journalists, and the boy they killed a few days ago, but, I mean, these crimes are ongoing. It's a daily thing. It's a daily thing. And the irony is that if you go and you look at Gaza, you look at the Jewish cemeteries in Gaza, they were kept in perfect condition. How do I know this? Because the Israeli soldiers in the last months, as they were invading Gaza, went and posed for photographs in these in a Jewish cemetery, and you can see it's been tended to, it's been taken care of, it hasn't been vandalized, unlike what people do to Muslim graves in England. Treated with, taken care of by Palestinian Muslims, as Arab Muslims do to Christian sites, in Syria and Lebanon, Palestine. They take care of them, they tend to them. And then what do the Israelis do to repay or return the favor to the Palestinian Muslims who have taken care of Jewish graves in Gaza? They go and bulldoze cemeteries, several cemeteries, containing old bodies, new bodies, people that have just recently been martyred, and film it even and post it online. I mean, if that is not terrorism, I don't know what is. To me, that is terrorism in every sense of the word. Not this Tony Blair, George Bush terrorism. I mean real terrorism. It's designed to shock, to offend, to, force into submission, to terrorize civilians. Desecrating is an understatement. I mean, we're not talking about someone spray painting a grave. They're bulldozing cemeteries, bulldozing them with, tractors and D9s. I mean, Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Really, we could sit here all night. We would never be done with their crimes. We would never be done. And I've done that many times. Absolutely scandalous. Absolutely scandalous. Now, I know you're all itching for me to get to Hezbollah and, what's coming after Ismael Haniyeh. And I will in good time. But I want to, we've got a lot of segments and ground to cover, so, I'll do it at my own pace. And thank you again to all of you for supporting the show. Again, they demonetized the channel as punishment for, saying things that Israelis and Zionists find uncomfortable, simply doing my job as a journalist. And as a result, they made sure that you can't donate on YouTube. So if you could kindly oblige me with your support for independent journalism and my work, I would be very grateful if you could donate on Patreon, on PayPal, on GoFundMe, or Rumble. We've got a couple of donations here. This is from, give me a second, it's just loading. Thank you to Mazkuri for joining on Patreon. I'll play you a crab dance momentarily. We've also got a donation on PayPal from Yassine, who just sent a bunch of emojis, a Palestine flag with a heart. Thank you. And we've got one from Batul, who says, thank you for everything you do. Thank you. And we've got another contribution from Carla. Thank you, Carla. And there's another one here from Abbas, who says, love you, bro. Thank you. Much obliged. I'll play a crab dance, then we'll continue with these segments.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard. Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead. You have fucking crossed the line. Claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome.
Thank you. والله في كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro.
And then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9s. A number 9 large.
we got him.
Because I have to do it myself. I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
Oh!
Disgusting!
She was 12, I was 30, but anyway.
We'll do it live. Fuck it.
Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Why attack Sanders?
Wait, you're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
Thank you again all so much, and I think we'll just proceed immediately with the article about the Israeli Olympic team. And let me show you the real side of the Olympic team, and then I'll go to Iran. So I published my investigation into Israeli Olympic athletes, footballers, football clubs, and I want to go through the article with you because I think you're going to find it rather informative and illuminating and enlightening. So it's titled "Meet Israel's Olympic Team, the IDF soldiers who support genocide." Now look, every Israeli soldier is, every Israeli footballer, every Israeli athlete is a soldier. You cannot join an Israeli national sports team without having been in the military first. You have a few exceptions, but they're rare. Okay, so when you look at these athletes, you should understand they are all trained killers. Yes, they spend a little less time, it's fast track, but they're trained killers, okay? They are reservists in the army. Now, in addition to that, that's not the only problem because, you know, there are many countries that have mandatory military service. That's not the problem. It's half a problem. Look at the things they have said in the last months. Okay, so this is the flag bearer for the Israeli team. He basically signed bombs that were about to be dropped on Gaza. Okay, and now the Israelis are claiming he was never in the front lines. You know, like as if that absolves him of this. So he's on the judo team. His teammate posted, Muki posted a video of the Israeli army raising an Israeli flag on Gaza beach after invading it. And he wrote, "Salute your heroes." Okay? Very politically neutral. This is another one on the judo team. So he wrote that, you know, he dedicates this medal to his best friends who fight with the best units in the IDF. I thought about you the whole competition. How cute, how quaint, how sweet. Here's another one on the judo team. And he was advertising Wingate Institute. So the Wingate Institute is a facility where Israeli athletes train. Okay, you have several Israeli sports teams, national sports teams based there. But guess what? This is not just a sports facility. It is an IDF fitness training base. So that shows you again how the Israelis mix their military with their athletic and Olympic careers. They don't distinguish between the two, okay? Here's the same guy taking a photo with Herzog, with the Israeli president, before going to the Paris Olympics. So another one posted, "I want to strengthen our dear soldiers at the borders." You know, and the whole judo team visited the 102nd Air Force Squadron in March, okay? So the whole men's judo team, the Olympic team, went to this Air Force base just a few months ago during the genocide. And the women's judo team did the same thing, but to another one. They went to the 402nd Battalion, which is near Gaza. Okay? So this video that I'm about to show you is really amazing. This is from 2021 and it's posted by the Israeli Defense Forces. And just look at the editing, okay? It's very well edited. Kudos. It's very well edited. But you see what they're doing. They're drawing Olympic rings here, okay? And I mean, the athletes are basically transforming into soldiers, right? Literally, like side by side. Side by side. So the message that they're conveying in this video is that Israeli Olympic athletes and Israeli soldiers are one and the same. It's literally right there explicitly in the video and even in the message. Athlète olympique, soldat du sale. So basically, they're you know, it's like the meme with the handshake meme. Okay, it means Olympic athletes and IDF soldiers. No difference. No difference. The message couldn't be clearer. Okay. So I'm just providing that for context again to show you how they mix the two. And there's a video that a bunch of players from the Israeli women's football team, so not in the Olympic team, but nevertheless, and they did the same thing. They basically, they're jumping like from one cut to the next, from their jerseys to their IDF uniforms. Again, the same message, like our military identity is the same as our athletic, sportive career. That's what it means. So, this is not just mandatory military service. They are endorsing the IDF. They are proud to be in the IDF. They are, encouraging the Israeli army while it's committing genocide. And you cannot sit there and tell me that this doesn't violate political neutrality in sports. It does. I literally quote in the article, I quote all of the relevant parts in the Olympic Charter. It says sports organizations must be politically neutral, okay? And it's even included in the IOC's mission statement. Again, so just going down here, look at the women's judo team. So Geffen Primo, this is in May. She wrote, "Thank you to the IDF soldiers and security forces." Even 10 years ago, she was posting about about thank you to the IDF while Israel was killing Palestinians. So, I had to really go deep to look at this stuff. It was exhausting. I spent like 2.5 weeks researching this thing. Israeli athletes post so much genocidal crap. It's unbelievable. And it's not even confined to this war only, is it? Basically on the left, she's advocating ethnic cleansing by saying, why don't other countries take in refugees? What they want is they want to get rid of Palestinians. That's what they mean. They don't care about refugees. They create refugees. People in Gaza are already literally, most of them, refugees. 70% of the people in Gaza are refugees because Israelis stole their homes, and now they want to make them refugees a third, fourth, fifth time. Anyway, here's another one on the judo team. So she recently wrote that her heart is with our, quote, heroic soldiers all along the way. Right, and she dedicated a medal to them. And then another one on the team said she wants to bring a little joy to the country that she loves so much, the state, the soldiers. So you see, they're not just talking about like, oh, Israel or the kidnapped, explicitly saying the soldiers, the IDF. Another one said, I want to thank our army for fighting and risking their lives. Another one said, this is when she won something in Qatar. She said to the soldiers of the Israeli Defense Forces, and the state of Israel, and then she goes on IDF Army radio. So you have another one, Hershko is her name, and she's been dedicating a ton of her medals to someone who is also an Israeli athlete / soldier who died on October 7th. Now we go to the swimming team. So I just did judo. Huh? You can find any section of Israeli Olympic team, and they're like this. This one, Brobritsky, was saying that, posting basically propaganda about Hamas raping people and all this sort of crap. And you can see them in their IDF uniforms side by side. I wanted to make very clear that these people are trained killers in a genocidal army. All right. And this one over here, he posted his photo of his time in the military back in January and wrote "Good old days." Okay, so this is while Israel was being tried for genocide at the ICC, at the International Court of Justice. He goes and posts a photo of him, his time in the IDF, saying "good old days." Wow. Track and field, this one's great. This one, Lona, she posted this image on October 14th. So when Israel was, beginning to bomb Gaza and had killed already thousands of people, basically saying that what the IDF is doing in Gaza is an apocalypse and it's sanctioned by God. You see there's a Bible there, like they're taking instructions from it. It's a very clear endorsement of what's happening in Gaza, saying this is divine. Here's another one, Mayor. So she was a teacher in the IDF. She said during an interview in November how proud she was to be in the IDF. You go down the whole bloody team. I mean, it's unbelievable. Horse riding, fencing, football. All of them, they're all saying the same things. They're dedicating their wins to the Israelis. They're proud of it. And also, you look at the football clubs. This is something you have to understand, which is very important, because the Olympic Charter does not just bind the Israeli Olympic team. Every country that has an Olympic committee is, all of its sports organizations are bound by the Olympic Charter. Like if you have a football association, like the FA in England, they have to follow the Olympic Charter. It says it. Because it's like an umbrella. So my point here is that you cannot just look at the Olympic team as the people violating the Olympic Charter. Even those that are not participating in the Olympics, even just regular football players who play in the national team or in football clubs, are violating the Olympic Charter by saying genocidal things or promoting the Israeli Defense Forces, because they are violating the peace mission that is in the Charter and also the this mission statement of political neutrality. Okay? And just to give you an idea how wild this is, okay? One of them said, for example, erase Gaza. Okay? Erase Gaza permanently. I hope there will be no concessions, that there will be no drop of morality in the IDF. And then another one said that destroy, tighten, crush. What is the logical reason why 200 tons of bombs haven't already been dropped on Gaza? So these are players in the national team. Yeah? Here's another one. Talking about, the warriors, meaning, he's talking about the soldiers that he met, and he's posting racist cartoons in 2012 and so on. It's amazing. And if you look at the football clubs give merchandise to the Israeli soldiers. So they send them football scarves, memorabilia, they send them t-shirts, they send them flags, and the Israeli soldiers go and put this on their bulldozers, on their armored vehicles, and the football clubs ask them to take photos. So they give them free merchandise, and they say, please take photos in Gaza with the merchandise, send it back to us, and we'll share it on social media. Okay, so, these photos were not posted by the soldiers. They were posted by the football clubs themselves, right? Here they are giving goodie bags, right? So these are various Israeli football clubs like Maccabi, Tel Aviv FC, and so on. And you can see them. They're in Gaza on top of tanks, on the beach, just proudly posing with these football scarves and so on. And the football clubs also post obituaries. So when you have an IDF soldier who's killed, they will post in honor of these people who went on a genocide mission. And they also send their football players to visit wounded Israeli troops in hospital. You can see them here. These are players from FC Beitar posing with a wounded Israeli soldier and a machine gun, in November of 2023. They also congratulate fans who enlist in the IDF. Again, it's mandatory, but nevertheless, no one is obliging football clubs to say congratulations, are they? They also post things like this, pictures of planes and helicopters glorifying the aerial bombardment of Gaza. They host injured IDF troops as well. They bring them backstage, give them, pizza, let them meet the football players, do a meet and greet. It's quite quaint, isn't it? Right? So there's no question here that the football clubs are openly endorsing, promoting, supporting the Israeli army, the Israeli army's actions, and the Israeli soldiers. There's no question here. This is not one club. These are like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 clubs. The biggest ones in Israel. So and the players are going there. The players in the club. It's not like the management. It's the goddamn players, the athletes, who are supposed to be neutral. I mean, forget the Olympics. Forget the Olympics. This by itself should see the Israelis and their football association banned from FIFA and the Olympic Committee. It's a clear violation. Of course you have military service in countries like Switzerland or national service in Austria. You don't see, Swiss athletes going and taking photos with the Swiss army during a genocide. And it doesn't exist. Don't mix the two, because the Israelis want to distract you and say, like, well, everybody goes to the army, which is not what they were admitting on October 7. On October 7, everyone was a civilian, remember? They're not soldiers, they're civilians. But now everyone is in the army. Everyone is in the army. So this needs to be underscored. And in addition to that, look what they're doing to the Palestinians. It's not only the violations Israelis athletes have committed. The Israelis are murdering the Palestinians. They're preventing the Palestinians from competing by destroying all of their stadiums, their football pitches, killing, referees, killing people on the national football team, Olympic coaches. I mean, they turned Yarmouk Stadium into a concentration camp. Look, blindfolding people, stripping them to underwear, humiliating them. I'm sorry, the Olympic Committee, as I say here, in the charter, it says that it has to, quote, to promote safe sport and the protection of athletes from all forms of harassment and abuse. Can you tell me how bulldozing a football stadium and turning it into a concentration camp is not abuse? Or killing a FIFA referee, or killing footballers on the national team? How is that not harassment and abuse? It's actually worse. It's murder. It's worse than harassment and abuse. You're literally murdering them. And so we come back to the hypocrisy. Why is Russia banned? Why is Belarus banned, but not Israel? Remember, the condition that they set out for the Russians and the Belarusians is that if you want to compete, you can only do so as an individual athlete. So no football teams, no volleyball teams, no any teams, only individuals can compete, and they have to do it under a neutral flag, meaning no Russian national anthem, no Russian flag, no Russian insignia, nothing. And they cannot have any connection to the security services, the army, and if they say anything to promote the war, they're banned. Okay? Why aren't the Israelis being held to that standard when the Israelis are killing more civilians, carrying out more destruction, are accused of genocide in the World Court, are filming their own war crimes, the athletes are participating in promoting the war effort? Jesus Christ. I mean, the Russian team, the Russian Olympic team, has no soldiers as far as I know. Maybe one or two, I don't know, but certainly not the whole team. It's incomparable to the Israeli team, incomparable. I mean, the violations are bigger, they are more numerous, and they are worse on the Israeli side. So how can you impose these conditions on Russia and Belarus? And they took them 4 days to do it, 4 days. Remember, the war began on February 24th, 2022. On February 28th, 4 days later, they banned the Russian athletes. It's been 10 months in Gaza, 10 months. And what have the Israelis done? They've literally admitted this in the media. They got their diplomats, they got their legal advisors from the sports, culture, and tourism ministries, and the head of the Israeli army to work on sabotaging any effort to ban Israel from FIFA. Who the hell gets the head of the army to work on preventing a FIFA ban? I mean, these people are lunatics. Look at this disproportionality. Again, this is Israeli media saying this. The head of the IDF worked around the clock, these are the exact words, worked around the clock to torpedo the initiative. And then the Israeli foreign minister threatens, on Twitter, openly threatens the head of the Palestinian Football Association and the Olympic Committee with prison. Look, you can see the bars, the prison tracksuit, and photoshopping his head on it, saying that if you try to ban us, if you go ahead with your attempt to ban us from FIFA, we will put you in prison and you'll be playing football in prison. These people are lunatics. Actually, that's an insult to lunatics. Just crazy, really crazy. Even the Israelis, they set up like an emergency committee, the one I was just telling you about with the head of the army and all this crap. And they had a WhatsApp group, and even they were stunned. They were stunned that the foreign minister had posted something like this. So a senior Israeli sports lawyer, fuming, wrote, quote, "Friends from the Foreign Office, just tell us it's not real. It came from the minister's spokesperson, I pray." Unbelievable. It's a colossal scandal in a childish post, I think they mean, that can't come at the hands of any minister, certainly not the foreign minister. It's true. Honestly, when I read these messages, it's so funny. But in any case, they succeeded. The Israelis succeeded in getting FIFA to postpone a vote on this at the Congress and then turn it into a special council. Essentially, it's like having the United Nations Security Council vote on an issue instead of the General Assembly. Why? Because in the General Assembly, everybody gets one equal vote. Israelis hate the idea of democracy, and the FIFA Congress has 211 members, and the world can see what Israel is doing. So if it had gone to a vote at the FIFA Congress, they might have been banned, and then banned from from the Olympic Committee. So what they did is they sabotaged it from ever coming to being on the agenda, and then filtered it down to a FIFA Council, which is 35 members instead of 211. Like the UN Security Council is 15 instead of 196. So, or 190 countries. So the idea is the same. Let's get fewer actors to decide on this issue, and then it's easier for us to sabotage and tackle it and lobby them into giving us a pass. And then at the last minute, they cancel the meeting. So even after getting it to go to a FIFA council, they cancelled it, and that was just before the Olympics started. So they saved their team being embarrassed or sent home like the Russians were at the Paralympics. It's incredible the amount of violations. It's a mountain of evidence that I've accumulated here, a mountain of evidence. And even if you look at, forget the genocide for a second, forget the genocide. Just look at the West Bank, okay? In the West Bank, you have these Israeli football clubs, like the one, some of them that I was just showing to you now, who are based in, what is the occupied West Bank, which is Palestine. You're not allowed to do that. If you look at the FIFA regulations, they state very clearly that you cannot put your football clubs on the territory of another football association, okay? The English Football Association, the FA, cannot go and put, Manchester United on French soil or on German soil. Do you understand? It's the same thing. You can't have Israeli clubs on Palestinian soil. The whole world recognizes the West Bank as Palestinian soil. And yet the Israelis don't care. They have hundreds of thousands of illegal settlers. They have a military occupation. And of course, they put their football clubs. So you could have banned the Israelis from FIFA and the Olympic Committee just for that alone. And that's been going on for decades. But of course, nothing was done. So you see the level of manipulation that's going on here is astonishing. The level of support for the IDF. This goes beyond mandatory military service. This is a society, a militarized, genocidal society that endorses violence, that embraces colonialism. And by the way, speaking of colonialism, shall I go through the list of the athletes? Because while I was researching all of these athletes and combing through their pro-genocide statements, I started to realize something. Their names don't sound very Middle Eastern, do they? We've got people like Goldberg, Semberg, Turgeman, Friedman, Silbermann, Blumann, Gandelmann, Salzmann, Feingold, Einhorn, Freilich, Gafinowitz, Yakovlev, Bakanov, Atamanov, Dolgopiat, Hershko, Bobritsky, Loktev, Nelson Levy, Bond, Paritsky. Do these names sound Middle Eastern to you? They sound German to me. They sound Polish. They sound Russian. They sound Ukrainian. Definitely not Middle Eastern, unless Russia was suddenly, transposed in the Levant, and I didn't hear about it. These people are colonizers, and I also realized what nationalities are in the team. Do you know what nationalities they have? They've got Russian, they've got Ukrainian, Polish, American, Australian, Romanian, Danish, Ethiopian, Italian, Portuguese, French, and on and on and on. So so these are not necessarily the passports that exist in the team. But, people whose parents are either Russian or Ukrainian, or they were born in Ukraine, or they have Ukrainian citizenship. So basically, they're not from the Middle East, okay? They're not from the Middle East. They're colonizers. So, I found like maybe 5 Semites. Like one of the athletes here. She's Iranian, Iraqi, Jewish, okay? So she's Semitic, obviously. 1 second. Here she is, okay? Traori. She's Semitic. She looks Semitic. She is Semitic. She's Iranian, Iraqi. Okay? But you're going to sit there and tell me that this guy is Semitic? Or this guy? I mean, yeah, you can find people like that, definitely. But I'm just saying, like, if you look at their names, Loktev is obviously a name from Eastern Europe, right? We know that these people, some of them are born in Ukraine. I mean, look, the flag bearer, for example, the one right at the top, he's literally born in Ukraine. Okay, so, these people are very obviously colonizers, and they tell you that Israel is diverse and Israel has 20% of the citizens who are Arabs. Well, yeah, because you came and built it on top of Arabs. Obviously, some of them are going to be Arabs. And Israel is diverse and they have religious diversity. I didn't come across a single Muslim or Christian in this team. I might have missed it because I was focusing on all the genocidal things they were saying, so forgive me. But, my observation was that they were the team was entirely Jewish. And on top of that, the overwhelming majority of them, white Ashkenazi Europeans. But apparently, we're supposed to believe they're Semites and they're from the Middle East. Okay, well, sure. You keep living in La La Land and we'll stick to reality. Thank you very much. So this is the article. You should go read it and share it with everyone, because people, they say Israel should be banned because of the genocide in Gaza, which is true. And that's reason enough. But you have to know the specifics. You have to read this. You have to understand the rules they've violated, what they have said, and how it's like the overwhelming majority of them. I got all the receipts here. All right. So, it's the link is in the description, and it's also in the chat, so you can go and watch it read it afterwards, and there you go. So let's talk about Iran. Let's talk about Hezbollah and everything that's going on. All right. You guys should be able to see that now. Okay, so So after the assassination of Ismael Haniyeh and Fuad Shukr, the Israelis are in panic mode. They've been sending and dispatching Western diplomats on their behalf to carry messages to Iran and tell Iran to de-escalate and not turn this into a big deal, which is very funny because you see these Canadian officials and American officials and all of them joining in as a chorus and saying, oh, we urge calm and we urge restraint in the following days and we don't want a regional war. Well, where are they when Israel is about to do things like escalate by murdering the top diplomat in Hamas? It's bizarre. They always seem to urge calm and restraint when it's time for them to face the music, but they never want to keep their dog on a leash, do they? So even Jordan's foreign minister went and visited Iran for like the first time in 10 years and said, I'm not carrying a message for Israel, which means I'm carrying a message for Israel. And was basically saying that, they don't want escalation, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you have to understand what Jordan is. Jordan is basically, it's a made up country that was created by Britain. Sound familiar? Yes, it's like Israel. It's just a made up. And, people in Jordan don't want to have ties with Israel. They hate it. But, the king does what he wants because he's backed by the West and Egypt as well. And now these Arab countries, these so-called Arab leaders like, the president of Egypt or the king of Jordan, these traitors, because most Arabs, make no mistake, consider them as traitors and Zionists. They're saying that they're going to defend Israel again. They will block Iranian or whatever other resistance drones from crossing their airspace, and they will shoot them down, and they will be loyal servants to Tel Aviv. We know. Didn't have to announce it. We know it. So you've got flights canceled to occupy Palestine. You've got a few carriers left, but most of them, have stopped, and the airports seem to have been shut down, which, is not going to go down well because Israelis' primary response when there's a situation like this is to leave the country because they're not willing to die for the land they claim is theirs, bizarrely enough. Now, Nasrallah gave a speech a few days ago and talked about these assassinations and what's coming next. And the message was the same. Iran has been telling, the West and their diplomats, we're not going to temper our response and appease you for the sake of appeasing you. You crossed several red lines, not just one red line, by killing Haniyeh in our country. Haniyeh was a guest. Now, you might not know any, you might not have any notion of hospitality, but in the East, all right, in countries like Iran, hospitality is a big deal, right? So killing someone's guest, is an outrage. It's simply an outrage. And you crossed the line. You didn't just kill a Hamas leader. You attacked Iran itself. And I'm going to talk about the implications on the battlefield, but just, speaking superficially and just, on the surface, it is an outrage. You can't do that. So never mind the political and military ramifications. So Hezbollah, let me play you what Nasrallah just said the other day.
نحن من أجل أن يعرف العدو والصديق نحن في كل جبهات الإسناد الآن دخلنا في مرحلة جديدة مختلفة عن المرحلة السابقة وأيضا يتوقف تصاعدها على سلوك العدو وعلى ردات فعل العدو. اليوم هو الذي يجب عليه أن ينتظر غضب الشرفاء في هذه الأمة، ثأر الشرفاء في هذه الأمة، انتقام الشرفاء في هذه الأمة لكل هذه الدماء المظلومة.
So this is the first clip I wanted to play, and here's the second one.
على العدو ومن خلف العدو أن ينتظر ردنا الآتي حتما إن شاء الله. على العدو ومن خلف العدو أن ينتظر ردنا الآتي حتما إن شاء الله. لا نقاش في هذا ولا جدل. وبيننا وبينكم الأيام والليالي والميدان.
So what does he mean when he says, between us lie nothing, lie only days, nights, and the fields or the fields of battle. He basically means that, you know, it's just a question of time before we meet you in battle and we respond. There's nothing between us. There's just time and space. But that's it. You know, nothing will stand between us, us and, you know, a response to you. Now, the thing is, if this were 10 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, you know, a speech like this, people would complain, and perhaps rightfully, that, you know, this critique has to be made, that it doesn't mean anything. It's like, you know, it's all talk, it's all bravado, it's all braggadocio, and there's no action. But we're not living in those times anymore. You see, when they killed one of the resistance leaders in January, after a few days, they hit one of the Israelis' top spy bases. You know, they fired about 60 missiles at the Mount Medhurst base, right? So they hit that one, which shocked the Israelis. Now, we can talk about whether it was an adequate response or not, but they did act, they did answer. When the Israelis bombed the Iranian consulate, the Iranian embassy in Damascus, did the Iranians not respond, albeit 2 weeks later, with a massive firework display, to put it mildly? Yes, they did. Now, what Hezbollah is saying now, what Nasrallah said in his speech, he said, this is not going to be a performative response. We're not going to respond just for the sake of responding. We're going to study, you know, it's going to be a studied response. It's going to be something that actually counts, something that really hurts the enemy. That's what he's implying. So I have no doubt that it's going to be in the next couple of days. It certainly seems that way. And the Americans and the Israelis and everybody else seems to be anticipating it that way. I don't think it's going to be like last time, where they told the Israelis basically for 2 weeks, oh yeah, we're going to hit you, and they gave them all this time to prepare. I mean, the longer they go on, obviously, the better prepared the Israelis are going to be. But I think that we might see something special this time. We might see missiles and drones coming from a different direction. We might see civilian, if there is anything civilian in Israel. Again, the whole population, men and women, all join the army, so how can they be civilians? A tiny percentage are actually civilians, but anyway. We might see civilian structures being hit. Why? Because the Beirut attack against Fuad Shukr was a war crime. I mean, you know, they injured 70 people, they killed 7 people, and they bombed a residential area, a densely populated residential area. So we might see civilian structures, but not civilians being hit. So let me be very clear. Hezbollah are not going to go and commit a war crime. They might hit something that is not a residential building, obviously, but something that you know, has more symbolic value, but isn't actually something that you know, it's meant to rattle the Israelis. So is that performative? You could argue it's performative in a sense, because it's meant to rattle the Israelis. But that's the point of deterrence. Deterrence is you know, making the enemy afraid to do something. Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas need to establish deterrence again, because Israel escalated on a horizontal plane. They didn't escalate vertically, they escalated horizontally. So basically, they need to make sure, they need to dissuade the Israelis from bombing Tehran again, bombing Beirut again. Otherwise, they will lose the upper hand, because the war thus far has been conducted primarily, I mean, it began on their turf, on the Israelis' turf, so to speak, in occupied Palestine. And it's been going on ever since, you know, with Hezbollah at least. They've been pushing the Israeli settlements back and the Israeli line back, so also on their turf, and gaining ground. And, you know, this is the first time that we've had such a long conflict where the Israelis are in a quagmire, and also that it's happening on their soil, so to speak, right, on the ground that they occupy. So they can't lose that upper hand. If they lose that upper hand, they're going to have you know, everything will go to waste. So I think that's what he means when he says a studied response. It's not about, you know, putting on a display, a firework display. It's about really establishing or re-establishing deterrence. Because this is not just about the leaders that were killed. On the battlefield, this doesn't make a difference. You know, again, I'm not trying to diminish Haniyeh, but he is not a military man. He is not a military commander. I know the Israelis might have told you that, or, you know, their minions at the BBC might have convinced you or you know, implied that he is, to justify murdering him. But Haniyeh was a diplomat. He was actually traveling on a diplomatic passport. So, you know, we have once again another violation of the Vienna Convention, just like we had the Israelis bombing the embassy, airstriking the Iranian embassy in April. They've gone and committed another violation. They've murdered someone carrying a diplomatic passport, being received as an official guest during an official state ceremony. I mean, you know, imagine a Canadian official or an American official, a guest in another country, a diplomat is murdered, a top diplomat like Blinken. You know, it's like someone killing Blinken and saying, "Hey, don't respond. Come on, man. Just, you know, just roll with the punches. You know, just pull your punch and just take it. Just accept it. You know, don't escalate. Come on, man. Don't escalate. We just killed Blinken. This is not a big deal. Don't escalate." That's literally what they're doing right now. They killed the top negotiator of Hamas, and they have the nerve afterwards to say, don't escalate, please. Again, it's your dog that is escalating. You're the one not holding the leash, okay? So, you know, again, the Iranians, Syria, Hamas, Palestinians, the Lebanese, they have the right to respond. I mean, it's not just a moral thing or, you know, like tit for tat. I'm speaking legally. They legally have the right to respond. They can activate Article 51 of the UN Charter. They can, you know, which upholds the right to self-defense. They can go to, you know, the International Criminal Court. They can go to the International Court of Justice. They can cite Vienna Convention violations, which I just talked about, Geneva Convention, the war crime, bombing a residential area in Beirut. There's a million things they can do here. They have every right to respond legally, diplomatically, militarily. You know, the Israelis escalated. When you kill the negotiator on the other side, you can't say then afterwards, oh, let's talk diplomacy. You just killed the diplomat. You killed the negotiator on the other side. It's a declaration of war. You're literally saying, I don't want to talk. I don't want diplomacy. I don't want peace. Do you understand? There is no other message being sent here. There is no other message. And it's a double escalation. They did it on Iranian soil. They know you have to understand in politics and military matters the weight that this carries, that it signifies. It's not just, you know, oh, they killed him in Iran. No. This is an affront on Iran and on Hamas. Okay, you have to understand it that way. It's meant that way and it's perceived that way. Make no mistake. And most of the world understands this. You know, the Israelis are now putting people in bunkers. They've opened bunkers to the public. And the Shin Bet, which is basically the Israelis' version of the FBI, you know, internal security and so on, they're preparing a bunker for Netanyahu. You know, he's going to go and hide again like last time. So an underground bunker in Jerusalem where senior leaders can remain for an extended period during a war has been prepared by the Shin Bet security service and is fully operational. That's great. You know, Netanyahu can maybe give another speech to Congress remotely while he's, you know, outliving World War III. Who knows? So here is Miller from, you know, the vampire who serves as a spokesperson for the State Department. He really does look like a vampire, doesn't he?
Of an Iranian response. So in April, you know, there was an attack on an Israeli attack on an Iranian diplomatic facility or consular facility. I think at the time there was never a conclusion from the US whether it did count as a consular facility or not. Now we've got an attack on Iranian territory. Do the Iranians have the right to self-defense in this case?
So I'm going to answer that question this way. The right is one question. What's productive is another. And ultimately, we don't think it's productive or conducive to anyone's interests, including Iran's, to conduct further actions, be they retaliatory or not. Any further action by Iran just raises the risk of...
What is that? You know, he's so used to talking just empty bullshit that he doesn't even understand what he just said. He said that it's not productive to engage in any action, retaliatory or otherwise. What does that mean? They should cease to exist? So you're saying anything they do is wrong? Oh, God, he's really funny.
To conduct further actions, be they retaliatory or not. Any further action by Iran just raises the risk.
He doesn't say military action, he says any action. Okay.
Risk of increased tensions. It raises the risk of further response from Israel or from other parties, and ultimately gets us into this position that we have worried about.
Yeah, you know, any military action by Israel is not productive and leads to the risk of retaliation by Iran. You see, this goes both ways. And, you know, Iran is not the one that assassinated your top diplomat in Israel, are they? Are they? So, you know, this talk is all fine and well and sounds lovely on paper. It sounds very rational. If you're an alien and you just landed on Earth and you're listening to this vampire speak, he sounds like a rational human being. He sounds like a nice person. But the problem is that it's missing context, isn't it? As usual. He doesn't tell you that Israel is being counterproductive, is being escalatory, is being, behaving like a psychopath, and that they're giving it weapons, and not just weapons. You have to understand this is more than throwing a bunch of bombs, into the arms of an Israeli soldier and saying load it up and drop it. Israel could not do what it is doing without diplomatic, media, and political cover from the West. Do you understand? Soft power plays a very, very, very important part in prosecuting this genocide in Gaza, okay? And getting away with things like this. I mean, outrageous. And, it was already outrageous when they bombed the embassy. Never mind what they did to Haniyeh. You can dislike Haniyeh. You can sit there and say Hamas is the most evil thing in the world. The fact remains he was on a diplomatic passport when he traveled. He was being received on an official visit. This is a Vienna Convention violation. This is a cornerstone of international law. You can't go around bombing embassies, airstriking embassies like the Americans and Israelis, or assassinating diplomats. Remember, Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes and General Soleimani were also traveling on diplomatic passports. They were being received as guests of the Iraqi government when they were murdered by the Americans at the behest of the Israelis. So the Vienna Convention, it doesn't just guarantee diplomatic immunity. It guarantees the inviolability of diplomatic missions, premises, the buildings themselves with the residences, and the staff, the personnel who work at the embassy, the diplomats, the consul, etc. You can't go and murder them. I shouldn't have to explain this to people. It's one of the most successful conventions and treaties in history. Almost every single country on earth has signed the Vienna Convention. It's really a cornerstone of international law. So when you behave like this, you're opening the door for the jungle. You're bringing on, and encouraging other people to murder your diplomats, which again is illegal and is wrong. But you're basically saying we will kill your diplomats. Tough luck. We're going to veto you at the UN Security Council if you complain. You can go to the International Court of Justice, but that'll take years. I mean, this is madness. And you saw what happened at the Mexican embassy in Ecuador. How they went and raided it. I mean, unbelievable. We've never seen something like that in history. Police in person just storming into an embassy. That was 1 week after what Israel did. So you see the negative effect. It is very real and present and not just an imaginary danger. And now the Russians. The Russians have gone to Iran. So Shoigu, who used to be the defense minister until 2024, until recently, we are in 2024, but he recently took on the role of the head of the Security Council in Russia, okay? So basically the Russian equivalent of a National Security Council, same thing, right? And he's just landed in Iran and is there to accompany a bunch of weapons that have been shipped to the Iranians. So there's nothing irregular or weird about the Russians giving Iran weapons. They exchange weapons all the time. We know that, for example, a lot of Russian drones were originally Iranian drones. We know they have security agreements. There's nothing necessarily escalatory about this. Russia is allowed to deliver weapons to Iran, just like America delivers weapons to Ukraine and to Israel. Okay, fair is fair. So, nevertheless, these huge cargo planes taking off at this time, it looks like it's some special equipment. We're looking at this and seeing not just the cargo planes arriving, but also Shoigu in person. To me, it indicates that the Russians are giving the Iranians some kind of advanced weapon system, or they're basically replenishing their stocks. They're making this, diplomatically, I know it's a military matter, but diplomatically speaking, it's a message to the Israelis and the Americans. It's a message to the Israelis that retaliation is coming and retaliation is going to be big. And it's a message to the Americans that you went and gave Ukraine massive amounts of weapons. You gave them some of your most advanced weapon systems and you allowed them to strike inside Russia. You also probably had something to do with Russian Wagner troops being killed in Mali, right? I was talking about that just recently, and Mali broke off ties with Ukraine because Ukraine admitted to it. So, and again, Ukrainian intelligence, the Americans and French have intelligence in Mali, not the Ukrainians. It's just Ukraine helped maybe pass it on. In any case, it's a message from both Russia and Iran to America and Israel, respectively, that, you want to play this game, we can play it too, all right? Russia is also able to give Iran advanced weapon systems and piss you off in your theater of war or in your other theater of war in the Middle East. So, you know, I wouldn't understate or overlook this visit by Shoigu in any sense of the imagination. So these are the cargo planes that have been traveling to Tehran, these IL-76s, massive beasts. And, you know, these are obviously military carriers. Now, at the same time, here's the video, by the way, just of Shoigu in Iran. At the same time, you've got the head of CENTCOM, okay, US Central Command, in occupied Palestine, meeting with the Israelis. So, like I said, it's tit for tat, okay? The Americans want to do that, okay, we can do the same thing. It's, you know, you have to understand this. There's a certain finesse, which sounds really funny in this context, given it's just war and violence. But there's a certain finesse to the symbolism, to the meanings of moves like this. I mean, don't make no mistake, they're not just going there for show or to send a diplomatic message. They're going there really to cooperate on military matters. But they understand the meaning of this, and they understand how it's going to be interpreted. There are people who work in the American government who are looking at this, and they report this to their superiors and notify them, because it is significant. It's not a random visit. So I'm painting a broad picture for you to understand what's happening. What are Hezbollah saying? You know, what violations did Israel commit? What is happening in terms of preparing for a response? What are the Israelis doing? Building, preparing bunkers for Netanyahu. They're opening bunkers for the public in Tel Aviv, which indicates that the Israelis are expecting civilian or perhaps civilian structures, not necessarily, lives, to be hit, or their cities to be hit, like Yemen did with its drones in Tel Aviv, just a few weeks ago. They're not just thinking, oh, it's going to be a bunch of drones in Eilat. Oh, no, it's going to be much more than that. And what are the Russians doing, to help Iran and therefore help the axis of resistance? Because remember, in this time, in this context, it's not just a random weapons shipment. Let me make no mistake. But this guy, really, this ghoul in the State Department, he really makes me laugh. Miller is really such a funny person. He's really just like, they're jokes. At the same time, this is just now, the Iraqis have hit the Ain al-Assad base in Iraq. So, again, this is an occupation base. The Americans are stationed there with other allied troops. And it seems that 2 American soldiers were just killed and 5 wounded. Definitely wounded, although the 2 killed is still unconfirmed. The Iraqi resistance fired a bunch of Katyusha rockets, so not missiles, but nevertheless a barrage. Well, I mean, 2 is not really a barrage, is it? That's stretching it a bit. But nevertheless, it was more dangerous than usual. And then afterwards, it seems there was a missile attack in addition to that. So to that initial strike. So people are thinking, is this the response that's coming from the resistance? No, it's not. Yesterday, Hezbollah fired a barrage of rockets at the Israelis, and people also think, "Oh, is that the response?" No, these are farts. I mean, come on. When the response happens, you will know. I promise you'll know. And I don't think the Iranians, and I say Iranians because they're the furthest away geographically, I don't think they're going to be firing drones this time. I could be wrong. I'm just saying because they take a long time to arrive, and it gives the Israelis time to prepare, and that voids the entire point of a studied response or a meaningful, impactful response to re-establish deterrence. You want to fire ballistic missiles or hypersonic missiles that are going to be there, very, very soon and take a few minutes and not hours compared to cruise missiles and drones. Some of the drones, I mean, depending on where you fire them from in Iran, they could take 12 hours, So it gives the Israelis time to prepare, and that voids the entire point, specifically this time. When it comes to Haniyeh, now, when it comes to Ismael Haniyeh and how he was killed, there's been a lot of speculation in the last days about the method of assassination used. So we heard some reports in the Israeli press that he was using a hacked or infected phone, and they tracked him that way, and that's how they got to him. let me start with that. Now, this is possible. I don't know. But I find it very difficult to believe that, knowing about Pegasus, and we've known for a couple of years now about this Pegasus spyware, which compromises iPhones specifically, although there are Android versions as well. I find it very difficult that Haniyeh's security detail would allow him to use an iPhone, and you know, I don't know. It just seems a bit sloppy. I could be wrong. We don't know, but I think that the more likely thing is that they simply tracked him with human assets on the ground. Okay. Again, when you have VIPs like Haniyeh, you know, or diplomats, their security details are bulging. Okay, you can tell that this is a VIP. There's a security detail. There's a convoy, and they're being moved to a place. It's not difficult to follow them. It's really not. Okay. If you want to do it and you're a professional intelligence agency, it's easy. You don't need to hack their phone. They're very, you know, it's a very clear convoy to follow. Now, the thing is, if you look at also the way that he was killed, they're saying that they planted a bomb inside of the guest house he was staying at, you know, a couple of months ago even, that they snuck this in. Why do the Israelis say these things? They say these things because they want to project an aura, an illusion of technological supremacy and intelligence supremacy. And they do this every single time. And they do this in a manner that is really, you know, typical of counterintelligence and propaganda. What you do is you'll have your agents go and, you know, talk to their friends who work in the press, and you plant the story. And we saw this with Fakhrizadeh, who's the Iranian nuclear scientist who was killed in late 2020, I believe. You know, they claimed that, you know, they had smuggled in some AI-controlled gun, and they did it piece by piece. You know, they come out with like a movie script. It's a movie script. And they get it published in the New York Times. And it sounds real, and it could be real. But what is the likelihood of that? Look at the Israelis and how their so-called supreme intelligence failed on October 7th. The Israelis don't know what hit them on October 7th. And every single day since October 7th, they have been getting pounded on the battlefield. I'm not talking about bombing civilians. Anyone can bomb civilians. I'm talking about fighting other men, other, you know, soldiers, guerrilla fighters on the battlefield. Where is their intelligence? Where is their amazing supremacy? Show it to me. What goals have they achieved? What strategic victories do they have to speak of? None. Fuck all. So I find this very difficult to believe that they, you know, they hacked his phone, and that they you know, planted a bomb in the exact guest house months prior. Get out of here. Who the hell plants bombs? What a pain in the ass. Why would you plant a bomb in 2024 when you have drones who can come in a few minutes, or planes that can come, you know, get there in minutes, fire a missile and get out? Why the hell would you go through the trouble of smuggling in a bomb and then getting someone to find out where the goddamn guest house is and predict it and plant it in the walls? Jesus Christ, what a pain in the ass. Who would do that? What a sloppy operation. What a waste of resources. So I find this very hard to believe. It's impractical. But, you know, if you believe it, it sounds like, oh, wow, they're so sophisticated. They were able to get agents in the country and find out which apartment he's staying at and put it, you know, it sounds, yeah, it's like a movie, but it doesn't make sense. Not only that, but we have confirmation from the people that were in the guest house or on the other floors, and I'll play you a clip in a second, or, you know, the Iranian government themselves, people who saw the site saying that what killed Haniyeh came from the outside. It was fired from the outside. Now, the Iranian government are saying it's a 7-kilogram projectile. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if someone fired it from, you know, it was an RPG, or whether it was an airstrike or a drone strike. It doesn't make a difference. You know, at the end of the day, they found his location and they killed him. I don't understand this story where they planted a bomb inside. This is logistically impractical. It's annoying and time-consuming and dangerous and risky and stupid and could go wrong. Whereas with a missile, you're much more likely to actually hit the target, and it's easier. Now, I'll play you Alistair Crook. Listen to what he has to say.
I happen to know a person who was in that house when he was assassinated. When I used to go to Tehran, I would meet him. He's a friend from Hamas, and he was on the 4th floor, I think, and Haniyeh was on the 2nd, or the other way around. So they were very close together. And he said, you know, they came back. Haniyeh came back from the inauguration about 11:30 at night, And then they sat around talking about what had happened in Beirut and discussing that. And then Haniyeh went up to his room about 1:30, and about 3:30, there was this huge thing that shook the building. He said he thought he was in an earthquake, but it was clearly, he dashed down and found that his leader was dead, as he put it, and his bodyguard was dead, and that the whole of the wall, outside wall, was missing, and the roof was all falling down. And he said it's absolutely clear it came from the outside. There was a penetration through the wall of some projectile of some sort. So the sense, I mean, for Iran, of humiliation, of honor. I mean, this was their guest staying in a formal guest house, like, the guest house the White House has, if you like, the one.
The Blair House, right.
The Blair House. Putting a missile into the Blair House and assassinating.
Oh, the New York Times.
In any case, I think his point is rather well taken when he talks about the projectile coming from the outside. I mean, this makes the most sense. And if you look at the modus operandi of the Israelis, they usually, consistently prefer to use drones and planes to assassinate people. I just talked about the 2 Al Jazeera journalists earlier. They hit them with a drone, right? They hit them from the air. I don't know if it was a drone or plane, but they certainly hit them from the air with a missile. The precision was astounding. And I don't mean that in a good sense whatsoever. On the contrary, I mean it in a devilish, cunning, conniving manner. So, we've seen them do this with Soleimani. It was a drone that killed Soleimani. I think he was, as I said before, I think he was tracked on the ground by human resources, by human assets, and then they used a jet or, a drone to kill him. And the problem is that when you have a target like that on your back, you can't really do anything. You can't stop, short of, of course you have radar and you can detect planes coming into your airspace and so on. But you saw how Yemen, for example, and Hezbollah have their undetectable drones. Who's to say the Israelis also and the Americans don't have undetectable drones? Of course they do. I'm certain that they do. And when you have such a high-profile target, you're more inclined to use it for a case such as this. So, it's not a question of simply, we'll find it on the radar and then shoot it down. It's not that simple. So, in any case, I don't know how they killed him, or whether it really matters in the end. I think the only sense in which it matters is that Iran has to improve its security. In the end, martyrdom is considered an honor. Dying for your country, for your land, to liberate your land. Palestinians consider that an honor. The resistance consider that an honor. The Israelis go and run away to Ben Gurion. So they don't understand the idea that you would lay down your life for your land, because they have multiple passports. Their parents were born somewhere else, or they themselves were born somewhere else. They're colonizers, not immigrants, colonizers, literally colonizers. They're settlers. So they don't have an attachment to the land the same way that Arabs, Muslims, and people from the Levant do. But nevertheless, it's not any less of a tragedy or any less of a loss. It's meant to be a terrorist act. It's like I said, Haniyeh was a statesman. He was a politician. He was not a military mind or a commander. Doesn't mean he was lacking in those areas, but nevertheless, it doesn't impact anything on the battlefield. We're still seeing the attacks on Israeli military positions. The resistance are going to respond and actually respond, not just saying they will, one day. There's actually going to be something. So, now what's important is for them to reestablish deterrence. That's what's important. Because for once, the Israelis are having to battle on multiple fronts and on their own turf. On occupied soil. It's not their turf, but I think my point is well taken. So, in the end, this is really, they have to improve their security. There's no question about it. Losses like this are they're simply unacceptable. They're unacceptable. There's no way around it. The criticism has to be made. And I think there will be improvements, and I'll tell you why. Because every time that leaders have been assassinated in the resistance didn't lose its head. I know there are some people losing their heads. Like, oh my God, it's the end of the world, and thinking like, this is... oh, it's such a humiliation and it's over. No. The resistance has lost many leaders that in their respective time periods were perhaps more important than Haniyeh, you could argue, right? You could argue that, Arafat, when he was poisoned, was maybe more important than Haniyeh. You could argue maybe that Sheikh Ahmed Yassin was more important than Haniyeh. The point is, or Soleimani, for example, that guy's a military commander, right? So strategically, you would think much more important for results on the battlefield. And yet, the resistance always made the necessary improvements and adjustments and came out on top. It's been an upward trajectory. And it's been consistently on that path for decades. It's not going to change. So people need to stop losing their heads, even though, it's still a terrorist attack. It's meant to shock. It's meant to subdue. It's meant to subvert. It's meant to, terrorize people, literally, in the sense of the word, and force them into submission and make them comply. It's not a battlefield victory. It's not a military victory. It's not a military target. It's just straight up terrorism, really. So people need to stop losing their heads. And you have even some scummy people trying to make this about, oh my God, don't trust Iran. Iran are Shia Muslims, and trying to make this about Shia versus Sunni. Please shut up, really. I mean, this is the scummiest thing you can do. Did Hamas say anything about this? Did they speak in that way? Did they accuse Iran of anything? No. So shut up, please. Don't make this about religion and start talking about Shia and this and that. These people, don't trust people like that, because they're basically doing Israel's work for them. Israel wants nothing more than division. That's the whole point. It's like cause a massive disaster in the enemy's camp or your adversary's camp. Cause people to go wild and start fighting amongst themselves. This is a victory. It's like a double victory. You kill the figure, and then you cause chaos within the opponent's camp. So people trying to make this cause divisions, either political or religious, within the resistance, are basically doing Israel's work for them. They may not know it, but that's what they're doing. And I mean, they should be ignored. They're a bunch of idiots, because where do you think Hamas get their rockets from? Where do you think Hamas get their support from, militarily, politically, internationally? Without Iran, there would be no Palestinian resistance left. Without Syria and Iran getting the weapons to the resistance in Lebanon, in Palestine, there would be nothing. Who would be helping? Egypt? You think the crooked president of Egypt, or the king of Morocco, or the king of Jordan, or Saudi Arabia are going to save the Palestinians? Look what they've done. So don't make this about religion, and don't make this about anything else. You have a camp of allies that have been helping each other for decades. This is not the moment to lose your head and act like it's the end of the world. It's not. And I think, if I may say so, I think that if Haniyeh were here, he might echo the exact same words. And as a matter of fact, when other people were killed in the resistance, did you ever hear anyone saying these kinds of comments about making it about religion, or saying, oh, Iran this and Iran that? No, you didn't hear that, because divisiveness leads to a house divided on itself will collapse, right? This is how the saying goes. And that's equally true in politics. Divide and conquer is a typical classical imperialist strategy. Don't do the enemy's work for them. Don't do the opponent's, the adversary's work for them. That's just silly. That's a waste of time. But I think it's interesting, nevertheless. I have to, it's my job to report on what's happening, what may have happened. We don't have the conclusive results about this attack and how it was conducted. But I'm sticking with what I said. I think it was human assets on the ground tracking him, and they did it via the air. There's a small likelihood they could have done it via shoulder-fired missile or rocket, or also done it via. They could have set up an ATGM somewhere on another rooftop. Of course, anything is possible. This is even the explosives. The story with the explosives in the apartment is possible. But what is likely? It's likely from the air. So we'll wait and see what the resistance actually do, and I expect they'll be hitting. In my opinion, I think, although I don't want to make projections, but I'm just trying to comprehend what they mean by studied response. I mean, when you look at the list of targets they've hit so far, they've barely left anything to hit. I mean, figuratively speaking, of course the Israelis still have targets, but what's left to hit? They've hit all their Iron Dome batteries, not all of them, but basically taken out various elements of it, either batteries, command and control, radar. They've destroyed the entire defensive line in the north. They've got them pinned down in Gaza. Again, what's left to hit? I suppose maybe Tel Aviv and Haifa. But again, you look at Tel Aviv, Yemen hit it just the other week. So I think hitting a petrochemical storage site might be a bit too much. that you want to leave targets in case there's actual all-out war, hot war, like to the point that it's, forget it, apocalypse. You want to leave something to hit. So Dimona, for example, the nuclear site, you're not going to strike that now. You would call nuclear, you'd cause, nuclear fallout and radiation for the whole region. So you want to save something for an apocalypse, right? But seriously, you want to save some targets for a rainy day. This is not that rainy day. It has to be dissuasive. It has to be deterrent, or rather established deterrence, but not more than that. You don't want to go too far, because then you're escalating and you're doing what the Israelis did, and that doesn't benefit anyone. Remember something. Remember, this is very important. Things staying the way they are, even if hypothetically they never respond to Haniyeh's killing, they could still be in an advantage. If the Israelis start bombing Tehran and Beirut regularly, then no, because then, there's no more deterrence. But my point is that you see what's been going on for the last months. Israel is losing international support. More and more people are protesting against Israel. They've lost legitimacy. They're being tried, in the world court. People want to cut off arms sales. You look at their military situation. They're losing against Hamas in 10 months, going on for 10 months now. They can't get rid of Hezbollah. Hezbollah is just setting all the settlements on fire. It's like boiling a frog, slowly boiling a frog, right? It's like salami tactic. These are different terms that have the same meaning. In the end, you're slowly destroying the Israeli economy. You're grinding their military down, like in a war of attrition, because that's what it is. The blockade in Yemen, for example, is also adding to that immensely. So, by every metric, even the number of people coming to work, the workforce in Israel, 17% haven't come back to work. Thousands, tens of thousands of businesses shutting down. Even if things stay the way they are, it's, Israel is finished. That's what you have to understand. So we don't need some apocalyptic war or some nonsense like that to liberate Palestine. It will come about naturally, even if it stays the way it is, because Israel is at such a disadvantage. But anyway, we'll see what happens. I think it will be in the coming days. But again, I don't want to make any predictions. I think it's just the indicators certainly seem to show that. But anyway, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Thank you to all of you for your kind donations and for supporting my work after they demonetized the channel. I've got, give me a second, I'll try and read these to you. We've got some donations on PayPal, and thank you to Katie for joining on Patreon. I'll play you a crab dance in a minute. Again, if you want to support my work, I don't do any special, extra deluxe content or whatever. I want my work to be accessible worldwide for free to everybody. And if you're able to support, then thank you very much. And you can do that on Patreon and so on. Thank you to Guy for the donation. We also have another one here on Patreon, a contribution from Jason, who says, once again, Israel commits a massive act of aggression, then hides under the bed while the United States comes to rescue. Absolutely, yeah. When they start dispatching Western diplomats to talk to Iran, that's, this is what they want. Even in an all-out war, they want Daddy America to come and save the day for them, Helen, thank you very much. Says, love your work, Richard. You're most kind. Thank you, Helen. And we've got a contribution here from Neshe, who says, keep up the good work, Richard. I really appreciate your hard work and for speaking the absolute truth. Please stay safe. Much obliged. And we have another contribution from Darren, who says, British-born Jamaican Moor tribe from North London, saying, thank you for what you do and may justice rule. Peace, my brother. Much obliged. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And you guys are very kind. I'm grateful for your words. And we have one more over here on Patreon. This is from PayPal. This is from Maria, who says, I'm currently reading To Kill a Nation, The Attack on Yugoslavia by Michael Parenti. I feel like what I'm reading is what's happening today. All the same propaganda and underhanded tactics used in that shit show of a conflict, as my mother would say. Well, your mother's a very, very wise woman. And Parenti is on point there, definitely. I'll play a crab dance and then we'll keep going. I 01 over here to Katie. Thank you so much, Katie. I really appreciate it. This is for you. Everybody give her a round of applause.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line, claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome.
Thank you.
والله انتوا كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro.
And then there's the micro.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9s. A number 9 large.
we got him.
Because I have to do it myself. I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up. Disgusting!
She was 12, I was 30, but anyway.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Why you text Sanders? Why? Oh, you're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
Thank you guys very, very much. And by the way, I'll be in Belfast after tomorrow. So this is the event. Make sure you're there. It's called Julian Assange and the Death of Independent Journalism. It'll be at St. Mary's University College, Falls Road. And I've been invited by Sean Murray, who is an Irish filmmaker, and he's wonderful, and he's very kind to have me to have me over there to talk about what's happening in Palestine and also with Julian Assange's case. I didn't expect that he'd be free by the time we did this, but thankfully he is. So at least, you know, that's one bit of good news this year. Okay, so again, this is August 8th. All right, in Belfast, and I'll put the link below for you guys, and hope to see some of you there. So let's talk about. I have an update for you about, you know, the Israelis. I mean, God, this is... So the Palestinian who was hospitalized after being gang raped by a bunch of Israelis, has been taken back to the Sde Teiman concentration camp. And let me quote the injuries. He was hospitalized with a ruptured bowel, a severe injury to his anus, lung damage, and broken ribs. I mean, this is horrific. It's honestly horrific. It's not just rape. It's violent behavior. You know, it's beyond that. And the fact that Israelis were rioting, almost sparking a civil war. I mean, when you overrun 2 military bases, I would say that you're close to a civil war, right? You're trying to take control of the military police, and you're debating whether it's okay to shove sticks in people's butts on television in the Knesset. I would say that that's a decadent society with no morality left. And they sent this person back. I mean, Jesus Christ, you arrested the people. I don't know if they've been charged yet. They let one of them go. But you can clearly see this person has been tortured. Why would you send them back to the concentration camp? How do you know that there aren't other people who participated in this, who are there, who might do this again? Here in the Times of Israel, so the doctor who reported the abuse, who worked at the Sde Teiman concentration camp, they call it a detention facility. A detention facility, really? I call it a rape dungeon. The doctor said there was no way he could have ignored the signs of serious sexual abuse that he reported seeing on a Palestinian detainee that he treated recently at the IDF base in southern Palestine. Speaking to the Khan broadcaster in an interview aired Friday evening, Dr. Yoel Donchin confirmed a report from medical sources that the detainee had been presented at the field hospital with broken ribs and signs of physical abuse on multiple bones. He also confirmed that something round had been inserted deep into the detainee's rectum, causing a tear in the lower bowel and damage to one of the lungs that required emergency surgery. Jesus Christ. I mean, how do you rape someone so violently that you damage their lungs? This is what the West is condoning. You can't sit there and tell me that Western leaders don't know this is happening. Don't insult our intelligence. They are approving this behavior. They condone and allow this behavior. They sanction this. So these soldiers, as I told you before, they're not charged yet, but suspected of aggravated sodomy, which is considered to be, equivalent to rape, causing bodily harm under aggravated circumstances, abuse under aggravated circumstances, and conduct unbecoming of a soldier. That's putting it mildly. The veteran anesthesiologist told Khan that he felt an obligation as a doctor to report the signs of abuse. It had not crossed his mind that the detainee had been tortured by his Israeli guards. Right? Why would Israelis be capable of this? They have the most moral army in the world. Just gang raping people. That's moral. So the quote is, just as if a child or a woman turned up at a hospital with signs of abuse, in this case, our impression was that this was an incident that needed to be reported. The first thing that came to my mind was that other prisoners had what we, other prisoners had what we Israelis would do something like that? Yes. If he is a big Hamas elite force, Nukhba, so that's what they mean with Nukhba, criminal, and he killed people, he'll stand trial, but I'm not the judge, the doctor who said he has been criticized for both whistleblowing and for treating suspected terrorists insisted. There they are overrunning the base. It's like, how dare you, oblige wounded or sick people and uphold your oath, your Hippocratic oath as a doctor? How dare you do that? How dare you actually do your job? I think it really says a lot about Israelis. They just don't believe in human rights. They really don't. They don't believe in the Geneva Convention because, what the doctor is hinting at here, but which I am going to underscore, is that, yes, even if someone is supposedly a quote-unquote terrorist, like you say, guess what? They have rights as a human being. They have rights as a combatant. Now, you may be a savage and your army behaves like savages and barbarians, but you signed the Geneva Convention, did you not? So you're violating international law. The Nazis, their argument for starving and death marching millions of Russian POWs, purely because they were Slavic. So they did this as a racist, pogrom, basically. They genocided the Soviet Union. 27 million people lost. They did it on a racial basis, right? Just to be very clear. The Nazis argued that this was legal in their minds, right? In their minds, because the Russians hadn't signed the Geneva Convention. Well, I'm sorry to inform you, both Nazis and Nazi Israelis, since they collaborated together, that it doesn't matter who you have in your custody, whether they signed the Geneva Convention or not, whether they are terrorists or they are not. You signed the Geneva Convention. You are bound to it. Do you understand this concept? Your signature is on the fucking paper. Do you get it? You are bound to the Geneva Convention, not the prisoner. Okay? You can't rape prisoners. Sorry that this has to be said, but it has to be said. So, in addition to this, 2 people have died at the same concentration camp. Surprise, surprise. As a matter of fact, the figure is 21 in total. Now, this is what we know. Okay? So, they say 1 Palestinian detainee died of torture. I know that it's 2, okay? I know that it's 2 detainees. But just to be clear, these 2 that just died are not the same person that I was just talking about that was raped and hospitalized. These people might have been raped, I don't know. But they're not the same person, just to be clear, okay? As I said, that one was sent back, which is, I don't know which fate is more horrific, but there you go. So, they're saying Omar Junaid was one of scores of Gazan detainees who died of torture at Israeli prisons. The Commission of Detainees Affairs at the Palestinian Prisoner Society said, you have in Palestine something called it's a club or a society for the Palestinian prisoners. Basically, they represent them because many of them, there's no one to speak for them simply, so they publish figures and they publish statements on behalf of the prisoners and so on, just so you know. So, according to the statement, Junaid was arrested along with his brother by Israeli forces in December. His brother was released 4 months later. but Junaid was pronounced dead on June 17th by an Israeli group. Okay, according to the statement, at least 21 Palestinians have died at Israeli prisons since October 7, basically. I know they call them detainees, but they're hostages. Again, you have to understand something. Israelis rule Palestinians using martial law, okay? And it's specifically British martial law. It's the 1945 Emergency Defense Regulations. So again, to be very clear, the Israelis use an outdated British colonial martial law to hold Palestinians without charge and trial. Kidnap them. I mean, what do you call someone who's held in a dungeon without charge and without trial? And who is, they're hostages. Yes? I would say they're hostages. I think most people would agree. They're not convicted. They're not tried. They're nothing. They're just hostages. They're held in, this is why October 7 happened. Because, yes, one reason was, of course, to revive the Palestinian cause. No one was talking about Palestine on October 6th. I was, but, most of the world had forgotten about it. Many people in independent media were talking about it, but most of the world had forgotten. So one of the objectives was to revive the Palestinian cause, to derail normalization, with Saudi Arabia and Netanyahu, this new plan for the Middle East. But the main reason was this, because you have people being treated like this, being gang raped by the IDF. Make no mistake, this is not a new thing. Please don't misunderstand the message here. The Israelis didn't just start gang raping prisoners or sexually abusing them. Do you know there are so many headlines, so many articles. I've tried to fit them all in one collage once before. It's impossible. Of Israelis sexually abusing Palestinian children that they've kept as hostages, Palestinian men, Palestinian women, their fellow women, their fellow female soldiers in the Israeli forces, also sexually abused. I mean, there are a million cases, and these are reported on by charities like Save the Children. They're reported on by Israeli media themselves. Sexual abuse is rampant. It is a core feature of the Israeli Defense Forces. As a matter of fact, during the Nakba, when they ethnically cleansed Palestine in 1948, how do you think they stole the villages? How do you think they emptied 800,000 people out of the country? One of the main tools they used was rape. People would hear about rapes happening in the next village. They didn't stick around to find out if they're going to get raped. They ran away. They didn't want to get killed. They didn't want to get raped. They ran away. This is a core element of ethnic cleansing. And I'll show you one clip now in a second that will, it's going to make your skin crawl. Honestly, it's going to make your skin crawl. This is a woman who, so it's a documentary, okay? It features several Palestinian women, and they talk about being tortured and sexually abused by the Israelis, and this is really the worst one, honestly.
بس إذا بدي أجي يعني أختار اللحظة اللي كانوا معديني ودخلوا أبوي وحاولوا يجبروني معي في التحقيق وأنا معذبة. هاي يعني من أكثر اللحظات صعوبة. غيرها يعني كمان كان في شاب معتقل ما فيش علاقة بيني وبينه، قاسم أبو عكر، في حينها كانوا بيعذبوه بالكهرباء ودخلوني أنا عريانة كنوع من الضغط عليه عشان هو يعترف. واستشهدوا أنا بنفس الغرفة. يعني أنا عروني وأخذوني عند الشباب عشان يعترفوا وأنا عريانة، وربطوني، يعني ربطوا إيدي وربطوا إجري وأنا عريانة تماما. هاي ما كانش في داخلي إنه والله واحد غريب عم بيشوفني أو شو اللي عم بيصير، أو يعني أنا كل اللي كنته بدي أضل متماسكة من داخلي. بس لما كانت الحادثة مع أبوي إنه دخلوا أبوي وأنا عريانة، لا كانت قضية فظيعة كثير، رغم إنه التنتين يعني تعرية وتعذيب أمام الآخرين، بس قدام أبوي لا كانت المسألة أكثر. يعني كنت أنا يعني خايفة على أبوي، خايفة، يعني هاي قضية حساسة كثير، يعني خايفة يروح فيها أبوي، يعني زي كأنه انضرب إشي أساسي ومهم في داخله وما عاد بقدر يشيله. يعني هذا بيزيد حقدي على اللي هم السبب. يعني ليش أنا مش أنا السبب يعني.
So they basically tried to get her father to rape her. That's what the Israelis did. So you can, she was tortured by the Israelis in the 1960s. So you see, this is nothing recent. And you have thousands of Palestinians, hostages like her, men, women, children, held by the occupation. Again, completely arbitrarily using outdated British laws. You know, it's really sickening. And then they call you a terrorist if you try to free them. The whole point of October 7 was to get leverage, you know, to be in a position to negotiate, to exchange. Get Israeli hostages so that you can swap them with Palestinians. Now, the Israelis, to spite the Palestinians, they went and almost basically doubled, you know, the number of hostages. They arrested over 9,000 people in the West Bank since October 7th. Okay, so now you have about 21,000 Palestinian hostages. I mean, even if you have some who have been convicted of crimes, you have to remember they've been put through military courts, right? Military courts are only to be used in rare circumstances with civilians. Usually you never do this. The Israelis have made this a de facto thing. You know, it's like since 1967, hundreds of thousands of civilians going through military courts. Outrageous violation of the Geneva Convention, right? So even if someone has a conviction in Israel, how could you trust it? This is like, you know, someone being in a Nazi concentration camp. What does it matter what the Nazis accuse the person of? They're likely innocent and they're being persecuted, right? But even then, you have thousands who have not even been tried, who have not even been charged with anything. Some of, you know, if you're held under administrative detention, it's indefinite. They can keep renewing it every 6 months. They can release you and then bring you back and just keep renewing it, you know? And you're not allowed to know why. Secret. So, you know, these rapes are not new. The sexual abuse is not new. And this scumbag, I mean, look at him trying to justify. This is one of the rapists who works at the camp, okay?
משטרה צבאית התייחסו אלינו ממש יפה. משטרה צבאית התייחסו אלינו ממש יפה. כן? באמת, כולם, אתה רואה את התמיכה, הם עושים את העבודה שלהם כי הוא חייב להגיד לך כנס, תעשה, אבל הרגשת את הנשמות של הבנות שם, של הקצינים, של החיילים, כולם עם יד על הלב, כאילו, אומרים לך תודה, והם לא יכולים להגיד לך, אתה מרגיש את זה, היה יום שמחאו לנו כפיים ככה מהצד מדקיות, כאילו, מה אני אגיד לכם? אני מקווה מאוד, בעזרת השם, בעזרת...
So he was also talking about, he's one of the people that was filmed the day the military police stormed the camp. And, you know, he was talking about how the commanders are essentially applauding them, you know, encouraging this behavior. He was offended. Like, how can you come and arrest us? Our commanders sanctioned the rape. You know, he didn't say rape, but he said like this, we do this with the approval of the commanders, which again shows you that it's systemic, you know? So really just horrific stuff. I mean, do you have to be raped in order for it to be torture? Obviously not. I mean, they are, you know, if you're in the medical ward in this camp specifically, they put you in a diaper, they chain your legs and your arms to the bed and blindfold you. So, I mean, I'm sorry, you know, it's forbidden to blindfold people who are prisoners of war, number one, okay? Chaining them to a bed with their legs and feet and putting them in a diaper, humiliating them, having them soil themselves on you know, and get infections, and then having to cut their limbs off because you've handcuffed them so tight, which is a rampant. I mean, this has happened to so many people I can't count anymore, who've had to have their limbs cut off in these camps. And it's not just one camp. This, you know, we are talking about the worst one, or perhaps the most publicized one, but it's not the only one. The woman I just played to you, for example, from the documentary, you know, she was not held in State Iman, right? So this goes on in the West Bank and so on. I'm just giving you the name of the documentary. This is, Christ, I mean, really, just some of these testimonies, they're really awful. So it's Women in Struggle from 2004, okay? Women in Struggle. And the other one is Sing Your Tale, Little Bird. All right, I'm just going to put these up on the screen so you can see them. These are the two documentaries, okay? So you can imagine for these women to come forward and say these things is really not easy. It's really, really not easy. There's no, I can, understand what she was saying, and that woman was not lying. I can tell you that. I'll just read to you what Muhammad wrote here underneath. Okay, he said, I hesitated to share these testimonials, even though they are publicly available, because these stories are serious, sensitive, and heartbreaking. To retell them is to relive them. I do not want to share them as a rebuttal. It takes unimaginable strength to not only survive such a brutal act of violence, but to share your story, despite the social stigma, the racism, and the smear campaigns, and despite the risk of getting rearrested. These women recognize that they have an obligation to the truth. So do we. And I'll end it on that note. So we've got some new footage from the front lines, which I'll go through in a second with you, if you'll permit me. And thank you again to all of you for your support. We have several contributions on PayPal. This is from Joseph, who says, Habibi, much love. It's good to see you again. It's good to see you again. And happy you caught the show. And we have another contribution from Taryn, who says, incredible and critical content. Much obliged. That means a lot. And thank you also to Kazoo for the donation. So these are some of the latest clips on the front lines, and I wanted to analyze them with you. The first we're going to start with is a clip of the Qassam brigades firing anti-tank guided missiles at Israeli troop carriers, APCs, armored personnel carriers, and tanks in the Gaza Strip. Now, usually we don't see Qassam brigades using ATGMs simply because they're clunky. You have to set them down. I mean, they usually use RPGs, but these are just as effective, if not more, and much more deadly. So let me just play the clip, and I'll give you more information about the weapon that they're using. So he's saying, we got 2 troops over there. They just got out. 2 just got out. Out of the back door. Ya Rab means oh God. Rab is another word for God in Arabic. So they're just saying oh God, oh God. That does it. Direct hit. There's another one.
ايوه تمام ارفع لفوق شوي يا الله اكبر.
So why do they film the helicopter at the end? The point of filming the helicopter, you'll see this often in videos released by the Qassam Brigade, is simply to prove, if you will, that they indeed killed and or wounded Israeli soldiers, because the helicopter is a medevac, it's a medical evacuation. It's used only in emergencies, and specifically that helicopter is a Black Hawk. So it's more, I mean, you can put guns on a Black Hawk, of course, but usually in this context, in Gaza, the Israelis use it almost exclusively for medevacs. It's troop transport. So Another note also is, why don't they shoot the helicopters? Well, it's a violation of the Geneva Convention. You know, Hamas are not into the habit of murdering medics, doctors, or medical convoys. The Israelis love shooting at ambulances and killing wounded people and bombing hospitals and violating the Geneva Convention on a regular basis. Hamas don't do that. And it's not just the Geneva Convention, because if you go back 1,000 years to Salah ad-Din, you'll find that he's infamous because he treated civilians, women, children, the wounded, prisoners of war mercifully. No torture, no execution, murdering them and violating them just because you have power over them. On the contrary. So, my point is just that Muslim and Arab armies have been following what you find in the Geneva Convention, which is barely 100 years old, for 1,000 years, right? So that's the reason. They're just filming it to show you they actually hit people. Now, these are Tiger, the armored personnel carriers, the APCs they just hit are Tigers. They're known as Tigers. We don't know how many troops were inside, but we know that they were certainly occupied, and their whole point is literally to carry troops. So what else do you expect? Now, the weapon that they fired at the APCs is a red arrow. It's basically it's a variant of a Chinese anti-tank guided missile. And here I'll try and show you a photo of it, because I think you saw it before briefly, but not clearly. So you can see here, it's essentially a variant of the HJ8, okay, which is a Chinese model, a make and model. Okay, that's it. So it's very common. You'll find all over the world people taking weapons that are produced in other countries and bettering them, improving them, and modifying them to their needs in their theater of war. So that's just what Hamas did with this one. It's basically a Chinese-made HJ8, and then they modified it. This happened in Rafah, by the way. The clip I just showed you, this was in Rafah in Gaza, bordering Egypt. So I've got another clip to show you. This is from a Qassam sniper in Gaza, and he catches an Israeli soldier off guard while on a genocide mission. So this happened in Tal al-Sultan in Gaza, and they basically. Sorry, I'm talking about the next clip, by the way. I'm not the one I just showed you. The next one I'm about to play happened in Tal al-Sultan, and it's also the Qassam Brigade's sniping. He's a spotter and shooter. But actually, before I move on, did you notice in the last clip he shot him in the arse? Basically, I don't know if you saw that, but he really did shoot him in the arse. I think on the right side, if you pay attention to the right ass cheek. Forgive my French. It's nothing nice about it. Obviously, there's nothing nice about it. But these are people just defending themselves. They're just defending themselves in their homes from invaders. I mean, no one wants to do this. They're forced to, right? They don't do more than necessary. You'll notice that when they publish these clips, there are no civilians being hit. These are military targets exclusively, with receipts, with proof, with evidence. Not like Israelis bombing a hospital and saying, "Oh, trust us, bro. There was some Hamas people inside." Anyway, next clip is Tal al-Sultan, and also a recent one came out just yesterday. So again, they're using the Rule sniper rifle predominantly in these operations, which is locally manufactured by the Qassam brigades, and it's this is, as they say, we have a phrase in English: "Mother is the need is the mother of invention." So I mean, when you're in a besieged strip of land and you're impeded from leaving by land, air, or sea, you're going to find ways to defend yourself from people who are numerically and perhaps technologically outnumbering and outdoing you. And this is one of those ways, is to, craft your own weapons with your own weaponsmiths. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of refining. But these are just the things we have on video. So you can imagine what we don't have on video. And I find it astonishing that Israelis, their death count, the number of troops they've lost in Gaza doesn't rise. It barely rises. I mean, just if I can go back briefly to the APC video with the Nimr, this one. I would estimate you've got at least 5, 6, 7, maybe more casualties, okay, in this alone. And trust me, those things were cooked. Now, the Israelis will sit there and tell you, oh, no, the trophy system worked. The trophy system is essentially a mechanism on the turret where, it detects incoming projectiles. It clips out, you can see it activate, and then it will basically prevent the missile from actually impacting on the body of the tank and blow it up before impact. So, the astonishing thing is that they're not being activated in these videos, even though you can see that they fired the red arrow from a very, very large distance, right? So I think someone did the math on this, and if you calculate the speed of the ATGM and from the moment of, how long it took, just a simple calculation, right, of the number of seconds from firing until impact, I think they calculated 2.7 kilometers, something wild. And it doesn't activate. They just blew the thing to bits, and you saw the medevac coming afterwards. So definitely not working. And it shows you again, the Israelis don't have superior technology. They're being outdone by people under siege. But anyway, let's go to another clip. This is also from Gaza, also released in the last days. I think this came out just today, actually, and this is with their Yasin 105s, which are, again, kind of just their versions of the RPG-7. So you might be wondering what it says here. It says Tufan al-Aqsa. So basically, Ma'arakat Tufan al-Aqsa means the Battle of Al-Aqsa Flood, which is the operation that started on October 7th. So this is east of Rafah city, and just it says scenes of the Qassam brigades targeting armored vehicles of the enemy east of Rafah city. You see, he said in the name of God, and then he also basically he dedicated this to martyr Ismael Haniyeh, who, as you all know, was recently assassinated in Tehran. And there we go again. The medevac helicopter, the Black Hawk, is landing to take the wounded, and the D9 bulldozer is pulling is dragging the Merkava tanks away to try and repair them. So there's another clip I've got for you, and this one was from. I think we looked at this. I'm not sure anymore if we looked at this one or not. Yeah, we did. This is the one from the other day with the sniper, and it was filmed in a rather spectacular fashion. I mean, in any case, there's another video that just came out. Also, this is from. It's basically an additional video of the Death Trap series, although very, very short in size. And give me a second to download it for you, because I don't have it in full. I showed you one section of it with the snipers, but here's the rest of it. So there we go. Yeah, so this is also in the vicinity of Hay Tal al-Sultan, so in Gaza as well. Yeah. Yeah, and they said at the end here, the text underneath, basically saying that they caused several injuries and deaths and casualties among the Israeli soldiers. This was on Friday, and you can tell from the video the green, yellow, and red markings, the dotted lines. This is a camera that's usually used, for parking. It's fashioned. It's not a surveillance camera, a traditional one. They've just fashioned something out of what they have, in the wreckage to meet their demands, to booby trap and to sabotage Israeli forces invading them. So again, need is the mother of invention. So you can see these are people not in it, for military purposes to profit off of wars and make money. They're in it because it's defensive. They do it purely out of necessity. Doing it in they don't even have uniforms, and they're running around in sneakers without any form of protection. That's someone who's defending their land. The Israelis are coming in with all this gear that's been paid for by the West and gone into the pockets of the arms manufacturers. Pure colonial imperialist, occupation. Pure. So I want to underscore that difference because it's important. And the Israelis, of course, say, oh, well, they're not, they're hiding among civilians because you can't tell from their clothes. They don't have military fatigues. No, the Vienna Convention says if you're unable to wear a uniform, you're fine in your civilian clothes. What are you supposed to do? Go fight in your, naked, bare naked in your, in your primitive state? Of course not. And again, this is the difference between a guerrilla resistance force and whatever, fantasy they've sold you on the BBC and CNN and Fox News about, terrorists this and terrorists that. These are guerrilla fighters. Legal. Justified under international law. There's no debate about it. So, in any case, that's all we have from the front lines. I'll of course have all the latest, as the clips come out. But that's everything from this week, from the past few days. Yeah, I'm just checking if there's any new, if there are any updates, any news of, any response or something like that by the resistance or anything else. There's nothing. I'm just really, that video of the woman screaming with her child burning in front of her. I mean, that is harrowing. That is really harrowing stuff. I mean, this is again, we come to the root cause and the crux of the issue, which is, you know, colonialism is a form of terrorism. Okay, and I don't mean that like in a George Bush sense. I mean that in an academic, literal sense of the term. It's meant to terrorize people, to shock them, to frustrate them, to make them collapse, to submit to you know, the perpetrator's force, and the targets are civilians. Yes. So there's no military value or strategic value to speak of when you're doing things like this at all. And this is the majority of what is happening in Gaza. You know, the majority of the victims are women and children. This is a statistical, mathematical, quantifiable fact. And it's always been women and children in every single campaign. Okay? Every single one. Every single one. And even then, who's to say the men are not civilian victims as well? You know, what is this idea that, like, you know, every man above you know 2 years old deserves to die just because they're Palestinian? This is ridiculous, right? So yeah, so even then, it's actually much worse than what we think it is. And in a sense, you have a lot of gender-based violence in that sense, because the men are the ones being taken off and raped in the prisons. Not only, but you know, if we look at State Ayman, it's predominantly men, and just because they're men, they're arrested and raped and tortured, and you know, it is. Even the United Nations are saying this is a form of gender-based violence. But make no mistake, the women are also being subjected to the same atrocities. But you know, no matter how you look at this, even domicide, you know, the destruction of the houses, that's actually a thing now, because Israel has systematically damaged and damaged or destroyed 70% of the houses in Gaza. I mean, how, you know, this is a form of terrorism. Make no mistake, it really is. It really is. It goes beyond any concept of self-defense or proportionality or military campaign. It's straight up terrorism. It's just that they have the facilities and amenities of a state, or a so-called state, of a you know, colony, an outpost belonging to the West. That's it. They have backing of a state, but they're behaving like, you know, a bunch of terrorists, and they'll never be anything else. They'll never be anything more than terrorists, the Israelis. They really won't. Thank you all for your support. I see on Rumble we have some donations as well. Forgive me if I missed them and didn't read them earlier. We have one over here. This is from Robert, who says the MI5 riots. That's not a bad way to put it. And we have another one from sorry, 1 second, I'm trying to scroll up. 30 people. Robert says 30 people is not a riot, it's barely a gathering. They have drones to see above what riots stop at 9 p.m. 2011 riots went on to 2 a.m. It's MI5 Starmer benefits with new laws looking good on crime. Well, it was definitely more than 30 people, and I don't think that it's beyond you know, like the state is certainly going to benefit by, you know, restricting people's liberties and calling, you know, protests violent from now on. But this really was a pogrom. I mean, what happened in the last days, these were pogroms. I mean, I saw the videos. I showed some of them to you. Black people being targeted just because they're black, you know, mosques, people being trapped inside a mosque the whole day. They couldn't leave until past midnight. So, you know, you said 9 p.m., but they didn't leave past midnight, you know, and it's a miracle that the mosque wasn't burned down, or the Holiday Inn that was also targeted. These are miracles, honestly, but they're still crimes nonetheless. They're just unsuccessful crimes, but, you know, attempted murder is still a crime. So both are wrong. I mean, Keir Starmer is wrong for allowing this to happen, for encouraging and promoting racism, which benefits Israel, of course, because they want to portray Arabs as terrorists and, you know, Muslims as terrorists, so they can continue murdering people in Palestine and Syria and Lebanon. And he himself has said he's a Zionist, right? So they work together on this. They just do it on different fronts. So you know, nevertheless, the mobs don't excuse their behavior. They're still mobs. They're still hooligans and delinquents. I mean, there's no other way to put it, really. Robbie Adams says, thanks, Richard. Please read Dr. Feroz Sidwa's published letter on Twitter of his time in Gaza. It is being shared and picked up. I heard him on the Ralph Nader Radio Hour. I will. Thank you for the recommendation, and I will certainly do that. And I'll try to cover it with you as well. I haven't read it just yet. And we've got another contribution somewhere over here. I missed it. I don't know where the hell it is now. So Sako Papa says, whoever does the background music for the Resistance Warrior Group Q videos, you mean Qassam Brigades? I'm just going to call them that from now on. The Warrior Group Q needs to get a raise. Yeah, and also Sako Papa says there has not been a single video that has shown the Resistance warriors targeting even the medevac units. That shows professionalism. Absolutely. You put it very eloquently. I perhaps stretched out the sentence a tiny bit, but to that is the point. You know, it's normal. It's you know, not just common decency. It's just, well, yeah, it is. That's actually my point. It's not just military professionalism. It's just common decency not to shoot a doctor. Even on a battlefield, you don't shoot medics, right? They are off limits. They're like chaplains or, you know, civilians. You just don't shoot them, even in a battle. That's actually why they were forbidden to carry weapons originally. I know, like in World War II, medics would, you know, they would sneak a revolver or like a Webley or a Colt 45 on their person, perhaps. But even then, you know, you shouldn't do that. You know, it's illegal. And as you say, yeah, the Qassam brigades do not shoot at medics, even though these people, you know, I mean, you might understand the sentiment of why they would like to. But I don't think they think that way at all. On the contrary, like I was saying before, the cultural and religious values in the area, in the Middle East, have for over 1,000 years have dictated that one does not murder medics or prisoners of war or torture civilians, or, you know, this has just been, it's always been that way in Arab and Muslim armies in the Middle East. Now, you know, you might have had some incidences that to the contrary, but the doctrine of how war has been prosecuted and conducted, it has always been that way. And there was no Geneva Convention, right? Geneva Convention is a new thing. The Hague Conventions and Geneva Conventions are new, relatively new things in Europe. They didn't exist 150 years ago. So I think it says a lot, and it has to be underscored, because the image in the West that is projected and conveyed about Arabs and Palestinians and Muslims is that, oh, you know, like on October 7th, they beheaded people, they raped people, they burned people alive. It's all lies. On the contrary, they don't treat civilians like that. So there you go. And I'm just basically echoing your sentiment. That's all. All right. So yeah. So one of you is asking why you can't donate on YouTube. Well, like I said, they demonetized the channel. So punished. I've been punished by YouTube. You can donate on PayPal, ask me a question, or you know, submit a comment, or on Patreon, or on GoFundMe, or on Rumble. Rumble works. So thank you very much for supporting my work, for supporting independent journalism. I'm much obliged to you. And I have a crab dance for Yasmin coming just momentarily. I just want to read one more or a couple more of the contributions we received. This is from Beth, who says, thank you for the truth. Thank you. And Omar says, as always, I admire your work. I'm much obliged and grateful to you. Everybody, please give Yasmin a round of applause and a hand for her contribution. Thank you.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line, claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch off.
Thank you for Iron Dome.
Thank you.
والله انتوا كلاب بصراحه يعني ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
China.
And you ain't black.
There's always the macro.
And then there's the micro.
Do not come.
Do not come.
I'm gonna come. You talking to me?
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'll have 2 number 9s, a number 9 large.
we got him.
Because I have to do it myself. I know it's not.
I've fallen and I can't get up. Get up.
Oh!
Disgusting!
She was 12, I was 30, but anyway.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Why you text Sanders? Why? Oh, you're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
So, absolutely, they are going to try and clamp down on people's freedom of speech. But again, make no mistake that, you know, what we saw in the last couple of days were racist pogroms. And the irony here is that they were claiming for months that, oh my God, these people who are protesting against genocide, how dare they, and peacefully marching, these are hate marchers. They're supporting terrorism. They're anti-Semites. And then when you look at this behavior, who is supporting terrorism? Who is acting out terrorism? I mean, when you're attacking the police with bricks, with bottles, when you're trying to burn down refugees who have already escaped British bombs and American bombs overseas, only to come to England and then try to, be attacked again. That's, even one person who used to work counterterrorism went on the BBC and said this is crossing the line into terrorism. Now, again, I don't trust the motives of the security state of MI5 and MI6 because they want any excuse just to clamp down on people's freedom, but they were doing that anyway. Again, they months ago, they said, oh my God, people who say anything good about the resistance are terrorists. So they've been doing this for a long time. It's not the far right are not victims. On the contrary, it's the far right that is in government. Keir Starmer, the Labour Party, are far right. The Conservatives are far right. Democrats, Republicans are far right. They check every single box and meet every quality, if we can call it that, every requirement. So my point is just that they make all sorts of derogatory remarks about people protesting for Palestine, but when you look at how the people behaved in the last couple of days of these pogroms, they embody all of these smears and slurs, about being violent and being hateful and being racist. I mean, what is that? Did you see anyone trying to burn down a synagogue during the last months? Did you see people walking up to someone who is clearly Jewish and then beating them up because they're Jewish? No one has done that. No one in the pro-Palestine camp would dream of even doing that, and yet they were smeared by the media. And when we see black people, Asians, Muslims, Arabs being, almost lynched in the street, or call it whatever you want, punched, scuffled, I really don't care. They were attacked. When we see this behavior happening, the media call it, anti-immigration protests or unrest. Jesus, I mean, come on. What a double standard, really. What a double standard. So, anyway, I just thought I'd point out this hypocrisy. Again, you see this projection. It's such a core feature of Zionism, projecting your own behavior on others, accusing other people of what you're doing. So like Tommy Robinson, he talks about illegal immigrants, and he was convicted of entering the United States illegally with a fake passport and went to prison. He talks about immigrants, and then he goes and lives in Spain as an immigrant. He claims other people are less English than him, and then he changes his Irish surname to sound more English. And we actually don't know what his real name is. Even the judge in the United States was confused because he has like 5-6 different names. He talks about, the EU is bad, we have to leave, Brexit is good, and then he leaves and goes and lives in the European Union. Well, why are you living in the European Union if you hate it so much? Which one is it? I know you can, support British, so Britain leaving the European Union and still live in the EU. I know, but still, everything he does is hypocritical, so I'm going to point it out because it is. And then, he talks about being a British patriot, and he runs away from the court. Why are you running away from a hallmark of British achievements, which is, a parliamentary, a constitutional monarchy with democratic institutions like the independent judiciary. Why are you running away from the law? You say immigrants break the law, and then you and your friends and your followers behave like scumbags and delinquents and burn things down. I mean, Jesus Christ. Again, talk about hypocrisy. He calls refugees and asylum seekers who are in England legally. Again, the United Kingdom is a signatory of the Refugee Convention. It is a human right to apply for asylum. It's legal. It's completely legal. Okay? Every human being has this right. He calls refugees illegal, and he calls them invaders, and then he goes and takes photographs with the Israeli army, which has invaded and occupies 3 countries, and has killed more British subjects in a terrorist attack than anyone in history. The Haganah, which is what is today the IDF, carried out the King David Hotel bombing. They killed 91 people. Deadliest terrorist attack against British subjects. And he goes and glorifies them and defends Israel and, does interviews on Israeli TV and speaks like Israelis and, conveys their talking points. This guy is an asset. He's a Zionist asset. He strikes me as an intelligence asset, but minus the intelligent bit, right? So, his cover certainly seems to be blown. It's not that well veiled to begin with, is it? So whatever his name is, Stephen, Yaxley, Lennon, Paul Harris, I don't give a crap. The immense hypocrisy, which, as I said, is a core feature of Zionism. The telltale signs are all there. It's all visible. It's all clear. So thank you all for tuning in. Again, if you can support my work, I'd be much obliged. And please share the videos, educate people. And I'm very grateful for your kind words. And remember, please, to donate to the Palestinian charities that are in the chat and in the description. There's 2 Christian charities and 1 GoFundMe for displaced and disabled children in Gaza. Again, thank you guys very much. Take care. Ma salama. Bye-bye.
A is for
all men and women created by go. You know the thing.
B is for
I'm beginning to see why your wife left you.
C is for
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys.
D is for
Don't worry, I'm so serious. Children, I love to hear them.
E is for
Excuse to walk by the dealer and say, no, I'm not going to be a mule. I got something to do. I got to go do boom, boom, boom.
F is for
Time friend, and she's a friend. She's been my friend in and out of public life.
G is for
Go to Joe 30330.
H is for
Hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down.
I is for
I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate.
J is for
Just look at the record.
I have President Biden, Vice President Biden.
Well, I tell you what, if you look at my record and you still doubt about my commitment, then you should vote for somebody else.
K is for
Kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
L is for
The lion, dog, face, pony soldier.
M is for
Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone. Make sure the kids hear work.
N is for
NATO.
O is for
The only African-American woman that's ever been elected to the United States Senate.
P is for
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
R is for
Rest her soul, and although she's your mom's still alive.
S is for
Send a text to the word united.
T is for
Truth over facts.
U is for
Union workers, the UAW took incredible cuts in their future.
V is for
I'll vote for somebody else.
All right, thanks so much.
W is for
Wait, you're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay.
X is for
Xi Jinping.
Y is for
And you ain't black.
Z is for
She's sleeping?
Women in our country has been classified as essential. So this is an issue.
By the way, this is my little sister Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh no, this is Val, you switched on me. This is my wife, this is my sister. They switched on me.